Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1: torn envelopes, stained paper, desperate handwriting, dozens of letters hidden behind the plaster. Some were addressed to missing people. Others had no names, only phrases like "don't let her leave again." One had been written in crayon. It ended with a handprint. In the small town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, nobody paid much attention to 43 Sycamore Street. The Victorian house sat recessed from the road, partially hidden by overgrown elm trees that had been there since the 1950s. For almost 2 decades, Eleanor Whitfield had lived there alone. A retired librarian, 67 years old, with thin silver hair always pulled back in a loose bun and eyes that crinkled when she smiled. The neighbors described her as pleasant but private. She collected wind chimes that sang softly from her porch on summer evenings. She walked to the grocery store every Tuesday morning at precisely 9 o'clock. Eleanor had moved to Millbrook in 2003 after the death of her husband. She had no children. Her closest relative was a niece who lived 3 states away and called on holidays. The mailman Timothy Barker was perhaps the person who saw her most regularly. He would often find her waiting by the mailbox, especially on Mondays. Eleanor always asked if there were any letters for her. Not bills or catalogs, personal letters. There rarely were. On November 14, 2022, Timothy noticed that Eleanor's mailbox was full. 3 days' worth of mail. This had never happened before. Her porch light remained on during daylight hours. The dark blue curtains, which Eleanor typically opened each morning, remained drawn. Timothy mentioned this to his supervisor, who suggested he knock on the door the next day if the situation hadn't changed. By Friday, Eleanor's mailbox was overflowing. Timothy knocked on her door, then peered through a gap in the curtains. The living room appeared undisturbed. A half-finished cup of tea sat on a side table beside an open book. Timothy called the local police department and asked for a wellness check. Officer Sarah Delgado responded to the call. She had been with the Millbrook Police Department for 7 years. She knew Eleanor vaguely. The older woman had helped her find books for her son's school project at the library years ago. Sarah knocked loudly, announced herself, and after receiving no response, checked the perimeter of the house. The back door was unlocked. This struck her as unusual. Eleanor, according to neighbors, was cautious about security. Inside, the house was silent and still. Nothing seemed disturbed. In the kitchen, a plate with toast crumbs sat beside the sink. The refrigerator hummed softly. Officer Delgado called out Eleanor's name as she moved through the downstairs rooms. No response. She climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor. The main bedroom door was ajar. The bed was made hospital corners crisp. Eleanor's reading glasses lay folded on the nightstand beside a glass of water and 3 prescription bottles. Officer Delgado checked the bathroom, empty. She moved on to the second bedroom, which Eleanor had converted into a small home office. This room was different. While the rest of the house had been meticulously maintained, the office looked like it had been searched. Books were pulled from shelves, desk drawers hung open, papers were scattered across the floor, and on the far wall something had caught Officer Delgado's attention, a section of wallpaper that had been partially torn away, revealing the plaster beneath, and protruding from the wall itself, the corner of an envelope. When the forensics team arrived, they discovered that sections of the wall had been hollowed out behind the wallpaper. Inside these cavities were dozens of letters, some dating back decades. Some were crumpled, others neatly folded. Many had never been opened. They were addressed to different names, none of them Eleanor Whitfield. There were letters to Catherine Mercer, Daniel Halloway, Evelyn Wright, and other names the police didn't recognize. Most disturbing was the small crawlspace access through the back of the office closet. Inside, they found a child's wooden desk, a box of crayons, and hundreds more letters, many written in a child's handwriting. One wall of the crawlspace was covered with Polaroid photographs of different houses. Each photo had a date written beneath it, the most recent being just 2 weeks earlier. Detective Marcus Reynolds took lead on the case. At 43, he had seen his share of disturbing crime scenes, but something about 43 Sycamore Street made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The initial assumption that Alina was missing and possibly in danger was quickly complicated by what they were finding in her home. Reynolds ordered officers to search the entire property, including the small cellar and the detached garage. Alina's car, a beige 2005 Toyota Camry, was in the garage. Her purse was found on a hook by the front door, containing her wallet, ID, and $63 in cash. The only thing apparently missing was Alina herself. Detective Reynolds began the process of reading through the letters. Some were mundane, discussions about the weather, complaints about neighbors, or reflections on books. Others were deeply unsettling. One letter, written in shaky handwriting, read, "I know what you did with the garden. I counted the spaces. 9 is too many." The postmarks on the envelopes that had them spanned 30 years, from cities across the United States. Several of the most recent letters had been addressed to Charlotte Devereaux at 43 Sycamore Street, but according to property records, no one by that name had ever owned the house. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that Alina Whitfield's background wasn't as straightforward as it initially seemed. There were gaps in her employment history. The library in Denver, where she claimed to have worked for 12 years, had no record of her. The husband whose death supposedly brought her to Millbrook, a man named Thomas Whitfield, could not be verified in any death records in the country. On the third day of the investigation, while carefully removing another section of wall, a technician made a discovery that changed everything. Behind the plaster, wrapped in plastic, was a small leather-bound diary. The name embossed on the cover wasn't Alina's. It belonged to Judith Kendall, a 24-year-old woman who had disappeared from her Baltimore apartment in 1985. The diary's final entry was dated April 17, 1985. "He's been watching the apartment again. I saw him yesterday, standing beneath the oak tree. When I approached the window, he smiled and waved like we were old friends. I'm going to confront him tomorrow. This has to stop." Detective Reynolds immediately requested information on Judith Kendall's disappearance. The case had gone cold after a few months. No body had ever been found. The prime suspect briefly had been her former psychology professor, but he had an alibi for the night she vanished. The case file included a photograph of Judith, a young woman with dark hair and intense eyes. She looked nothing like Alina Whitfield. As police expanded their search, they began contacting authorities in areas connected to the addresses on the letters. 6 of the names matched cold missing persons cases from various states. The oldest dated back to 1979. The most recent was from 2001. None had been solved. On day 5 of the investigation, the forensics team found something in the cellar. Behind a false wall, accessible only by removing several precisely placed bricks, was a small metal box. Inside was a collection of driver's licenses, all belonging to women. Among them was an expired license for a woman named Alina Richmond, whose photograph matched the Alina Whitfield that Millbrook knew. But there were 11 other IDs, each with different names but with photos that bore striking similarities. Women with thin features, silver gray hair, and the same distant smile. The search for Alina now extended nationwide. Her fingerprints matched none in any criminal database. Her DNA, collected from hairbrushes and toothbrushes in the house, yielded no matches to any known missing persons. A break came when Timothy Barker, the mailman, remembered something unusual. 2 weeks before Alina's disappearance, he had delivered a letter with a Louisiana postmark. Alina had been visibly shaken when she received it. She had asked Timothy if he had seen anyone unusual around her house. At the time, he'd thought she was just being a nervous older woman. Now, he wondered if that letter had triggered something. Police found the letter in question among Alina's belongings. The return address was for a nursing home in Baton Rouge. The letter inside was brief. I remember you from Stillwater. I know what happened to Caroline. I'm dying now, and I want to make peace. I'll be telling the truth to whoever will listen. It was signed simply Martha. Detective Reynolds and Officer Delgado flew to Baton Rouge, only to discover that Martha Lessing, a 91-year-old resident of Sunshine Pines nursing home, had died 3 days after sending the letter. The nursing home staff recalled that in her final days, Martha had become increasingly agitated, insisting that she needed to confess something about her time working as a nurse at Stillwater Psychiatric Hospital in the 1970s. Stillwater had been closed in 1982 following allegations of patient abuse and unethical experimental treatments. Most of its records had been destroyed in a fire shortly before its closure, but Martha had kept some documents, notes on certain patients she had felt particular concern for. Among these was a file on a patient named Caroline Fletcher, admitted at age 9 for violent tendencies and pathological lying. Caroline had claimed that her parents had been replaced by imposters. After 3 years of treatment, including experimental therapy designed to rebuild her sense of reality, Caroline was reported to have made a full recovery. She was released into foster care at age 12. There were no further records of what happened to Caroline Fletcher after her release. The last note in Martha's personal files simply read, "God forgive me for what we did to that child." As the investigation continued into its second week, the question remained, who was Alina Whitfield? Was she Caroline Fletcher? Or was she connected to the disappearances of Judith Kendall and the others whose names appeared in the letters? The house on Sycamore Street remained empty as winter deepened. Neighbors left flowers on the porch. Local news covered the mystery briefly, but with no new developments, interest waned. Detective Reynolds refused to let the case go cold. He kept returning to the letters, convinced that somewhere in those desperate messages was the key to understanding what had happened. In January 2023, nearly 2 months after Alina's disappearance, a woman checked into a small hotel in Cornwall, Connecticut, using the name Charlotte Devereaux. The hotel clerk later recalled that she was elderly, soft-spoken, and paid in cash. She stayed for 1 night, then vanished. When housekeeping entered the room the next day, they found the walls covered with writing, names, dates, and addresses, including 43 Sycamore Street, Millbrook, Pennsylvania. By the time local police alerted Detective Reynolds, the woman was long gone. Security cameras showed her leaving the hotel before dawn, carrying a single suitcase. She left behind only one item, a child's crayon drawing of a house with many rooms, and in each room a different person, all with the same face. To this day, the true identity of Alina Whitfield remains unknown. The letters continue to be analyzed by the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Some investigators believe Alina herself was responsible for the disappearances connected to the names in the letters. Others theorize that she was Caroline Fletcher, a victim who somehow escaped from whatever trauma lay in her past, only to be haunted by it decades later. The walls of 43 Sycamore Street have been repaired, the letters removed and preserved as evidence. The house remains unsold. Locals say that on quiet nights they can hear the wind chimes still hanging from the porch, singing their lonely melody to an audience of empty rooms. And somewhere perhaps an elderly woman writes another letter to another name, continuing a conversation that only she understands, a conversation that began long ago in the halls of Stillwater, where a little girl named Caroline learned that reality is fragile, and identities can be borrowed like books from a library, kept for a while, and then exchanged for new ones when the story grows too familiar or too dangerous to continue. The case of the letters in the walls remains officially open. Crime 2, it clicked when they changed the sheets. Cut open, the mattress revealed a voice recorder duct taped to the springs. The recording looped a soft whisper, "It wasn't my turn." A second voice replied, "You took hers." In the quiet suburban community of Millfield, Ohio, the Harmon family had always been considered the picture of normalcy. Michael and Elaine Harmon lived in a pale yellow craftsman-style home with their 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Michael worked as an accountant at a local firm, while Elaine ran a small online business selling handmade jewelry from their converted garage. Neighbors described them as polite but private, the kind of people who waved from across the street but rarely engaged in lengthy conversations. Lily Harmon had been born after years of fertility struggles. Friends noted how protective both parents were of their only child, perhaps understandably so. Lily attended Millfield Elementary School, where her kindergarten teacher, Ms. Dawson, described her as unusually reserved but exceptionally bright. The child had an affinity for drawing, creating intricate pictures of houses and families that demonstrated skill beyond her years. On December 8, 2023, a Thursday morning like any other, Michael Harmon called the school to report that Lily would be absent due to illness. The call was logged at 8:17 a.m. just before the morning bell. 3 days later, on Sunday afternoon, Elaine Harmon reported her daughter missing. According to the police report, she claimed to have returned from a weekend visit to her sister in Cincinnati to discover both her husband and daughter gone. Detective Sandra Reeves was assigned to the case. When she arrived at the Harmon residence that evening, she noted that the house was immaculately clean. Almost too clean, she would later write in her report. The kind of clean that suggests preparation rather than habitation. The child's room was particularly pristine, bed made with hospital corners, toys arranged with mathematical precision on white shelving units. When questioned about the 3-day gap between Lily's absence from school and the missing persons report, Elaine's story began to shift. She initially claimed Michael had texted her that he was taking Lily on a father-daughter trip while she was away. She couldn't produce these messages. Later, she admitted they'd had an argument before she left, and she turned off her phone for much of the weekend to clear her head. The investigation revealed that Elaine's sister in Cincinnati had not seen her that weekend. Credit card records showed Elaine had checked into a roadside motel in Dayton, approximately 50 miles from Millfield, where she had stayed for 2 nights alone. Meanwhile, Michael Harmon couldn't be located. His car remained in the garage. His wallet, keys, and phone were found in the master bedroom. There was no indication of forced entry, no signs of struggle. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual that weekend, though one elderly woman living across the street mentioned seeing Elaine's car leave and return several times on Friday night. A week into the investigation, Detective Reeves brought in a forensic team to conduct a more thorough examination of the house. They discovered microscopic blood spatter on the bathroom ceiling that had been recently painted over. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Michael Harmon. The basement of the home contained a workshop where Michael pursued his woodworking hobby. Tools were organized with the same meticulous precision as the rest of the house. A reciprocating saw appeared freshly cleaned. Luminol tests revealed traces of blood that had been thoroughly scrubbed from the concrete floor. As investigators deepened their search, they discovered a small storage space behind a false wall in the basement. Inside was a collection of children's drawings, hundreds of them all depicting the same scene, a house with 4 people. When questioned about these drawings, Elaine became visibly agitated. "That's just Lily's imagination," she insisted. "It was always just the 3 of us." The case took an unexpected turn when Lily's kindergarten teacher came forward with a concerning observation. "Lily once told me she had a sister named Rose who lived in her closet," Ms. Dawson explained. "I assumed it was an imaginary friend. Most children have them." But she spoke about Rose with such conviction, describing her as the quiet one who doesn't eat anymore. When detectives returned to the Harmon household to search the girl's closet, they found nothing unusual at first glance. But upon removing the baseboards, they discovered a child-sized handprint pressed into the drywall. Further investigation revealed the closet shared a wall with a small space under the stairs, a space that had been recently resealed and painted. Breaking through this wall, investigators found a child's sleeping bag, a collection of small toys, and a worn teddy bear. No official records indicated the Harmons had ever had another child, yet DNA testing on hair strands found on the teddy bear confirmed they belonged to a female child related to both Michael and Elaine. During her 3rd interview, Elaine finally acknowledged that she and Michael had initially had twin daughters, Lily and Rose. "Rose was always difficult," she stated flatly. "She wouldn't stop crying. Michael said she was defective. We decided it would be better if people only knew about Lily." When pressed about Rose's whereabouts, Elaine's responses became increasingly disjointed, jumping between past and present tense. The investigation intensified. County records revealed that the Harmons had indeed registered the birth of twin girls 6 years earlier, but subsequent documentation only ever referenced Lily. No death certificate existed for Rose. No school had her enrolled. It was as if the second child had simply been erased. 2 months into the investigation, with Michael and Lily still missing, Detective Reeves decided to bring in specialists to thoroughly examine the child's bedroom. It was during this examination that they made the discovery that would break the case wide open. When they removed the sheets from Lily's bed, an investigator noticed something unusual about the mattress, a small, barely perceptible seam where it shouldn't be. Cutting it open, they found a voice recorder duct taped to the springs inside. The device contained a single audio file, 2 voices, both sounding like children, whispering in an eerie exchange. "It wasn't my turn. You took hers." The recording was dated 3 days before Lily's disappearance. Audio experts confirmed the voices belonged to 2 different children of approximately the same age. The focus shifted to the backyard, where ground-penetrating radar revealed disturbed soil beneath a recently installed stone patio. Excavation uncovered 2 sets of human remains, those of an adult male and a small child. The adult remains were identified as Michael Harmon. The child's remains, however, told a more complex story. Forensic analysis determined they belonged to a female child approximately 3-4 years of age who had died years earlier. DNA confirmed this was Rose Harmon. Medical examination revealed Rose had likely died from malnutrition and neglect. Further investigation of the house uncovered a hidden panel in Lily's room containing a diary written in a child's handwriting. The entries, simple but haunting, painted a picture of a young girl aware of her sister's existence and death, writing about Rose who lives in the walls now, and how Daddy says not to talk about her or Mommy gets scary. When confronted with this evidence, Elaine Harmon collapsed into a state of catatonic unresponsiveness. She was remanded to a psychiatric facility for evaluation, where she remains today, largely nonverbal except for occasional periods where she speaks to both her girls. As for Lily Harmon, despite extensive searches across multiple states, no trace of the 5-year-old has ever been found. The leading theory is that Michael, discovering what Elaine had done years earlier to Rose, attempted to flee with Lily but was stopped by Elaine. What happened next remains unclear, though investigators believe Lily may have escaped during the confrontation between her parents. The voice recorder in the mattress remains perhaps the most disturbing piece of evidence. Investigators never determined if the voices belonged to Lily and a friend, if Elaine had planted the recording as part of an elaborate deception, or if something more inexplicable was at play. To this day, residents of Millfield report occasional sightings of a young girl matching Lily's description, always at a distance, never verified. Some claim to hear children's whispers in the abandoned Harmon house, which remains unsold, gathering dust behind a chain-link fence. The most commonly reported phrase, according to local lore, is a soft, persistent question: "Is it my turn now?" The Harmon case remains officially open, with Lily Harmon still listed as a missing person. Detective Reeves, now retired, keeps a photo of both Harmon twins on her desk at home, the only existing picture of the two together, recovered from Michael's hidden safety deposit box. "Some cases you solve," Reeves told a local reporter on the 5th anniversary of the disappearance, "and some cases solve you. You realize there are darknesses in ordinary homes that no amount of polish can cover up, and sometimes the walls remember what humans choose to forget." Crime 3, deep, jagged gouges tore across the top slats 7 feet up. Between the boards, tufts of dark hair were caught in splinters. On the ground, a child's nightgown lay folded with a rock inside. Written in marker on the collar, "She comes through trees." In the small town of Pinewood Creek, Pennsylvania, things like this didn't happen. Not in neighborhoods where people still left doors unlocked at night and children played outside until streetlights flickered on. Yet there they were, those scratches on the mayor's fence, discovered on a crisp October morning in 2019, when 8-year-old Emma Mayers didn't come down for breakfast. Emma had always been a routine-oriented child. Born to Diane and Robert Mayers when they were both 37, she was their miracle after years of trying. Emma had her mother's chestnut hair and her father's serious blue eyes. She was the kind of child who color-coded her school folders and placed her shoes perfectly parallel beside her bed each night. Every evening at 8:30, she would kiss her parents good night, brush her teeth for exactly 2 minutes, and be asleep by 9:00. Her bedroom window faced the backyard, overlooking an old oak tree whose branches sometimes scraped against the glass when the wind blew. Diane first sensed something was wrong when she noticed Emma's bedroom door was open. Emma always closed it. She didn't like the hallway nightlight disrupting her sleep. Inside, the bed was empty, covers pulled back as if Emma had simply stepped out. Her favorite stuffed rabbit, Chester, sat propped against the pillow, facing the window, which was open just 3 inches, exactly how Emma liked it for night breathing, as she called it. "I checked her bathroom first," Diane would later tell Detective Sarah Loomis, her voice hollow from 3 days without sleep. "Then I called for her downstairs. Then I checked the backyard. That's when she found the fence with its inexplicable scratches, the tufts of hair, and Emma's neatly folded nightgown with its cryptic message." Robert Mayers called the police at 7:43 a.m. By 8:15, officers had cordoned off the backyard. By noon, the neighborhood had transformed into an investigation center. Yellow tape stretched across driveways. Neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering about how they'd heard nothing unusual the night before. "Emma was just in my second grade class yesterday," said her teacher, Ms. Paulson, mascara streaking down her cheeks as she spoke to a police officer. She turned in a paper about what she wanted to be when she grew up. She wanted to study the stars. The first 48 hours of the investigation yielded little. No fingerprints on the window frame except those belonging to the family. No footprints in the soft earth beneath Emma's window, though it had rained 2 nights earlier, which should have left the ground receptive to impressions. The hair from the fence was human, dark brown, but not Emma's. DNA testing would later show it belonged to no one in any database. Detective Loomis, a 15-year veteran who specialized in cases involving children, found herself unsettled by one detail in particular, the message on the nightgown. "She comes through trees, not I but she." And why was the nightgown folded so carefully? Abductions were typically chaotic, desperate acts. This suggested planning, ritual. 5 days into the investigation, 12-year-old Tyler Burke from 3 streets over approached the police. He'd been afraid to come forward, he said, because he wasn't supposed to be out so late. The night Emma disappeared, he'd been riding his bike home from a friend's house around 10:30 p.m. when he saw something that didn't make sense to him. There was a tall lady standing under the big tree in Emma's backyard, he told Detective Loomis, his eyes fixed on his sneakers. She was really still, like a statue. I thought maybe she was just smoking or something, but then she bent weird, like her back was bending the wrong way as she looked up at Emma's window. "Did you see her face?" Loomis asked. Tyler shook his head. It was too dark, but she was wearing something long and dark, and her hair was all big, like messy. "When she saw me, she went behind the tree, and I got scared and rode home fast." Tyler's account aligned with the timestamp of a security camera from the house across the street, which had captured a brief shadow moving near the mayor's property at 10:34 p.m. The figure was obscured by tree branches, making it impossible to identify. The case took an even stranger turn when Robert Mayers made a startling admission during his 3rd interview. Initially, he'd told police he'd been home all evening with his wife. Now, looking exhausted and guilty, he revealed that he'd actually gone out around 9:15 p.m. to meet his brother at a bar downtown. They'd had an argument over family property, and Robert hadn't wanted to worry Diane with the details. "I came home around midnight," he said, his voice barely audible. "I checked on Emma like I always do. She was asleep, or at least there was a shape under her covers. I just assumed." His voice broke. "I didn't pull back the blanket. I didn't want to wake her." This revelation changed the timeline completely. Between 9:15 p.m. and midnight, Emma had been alone with her mother, or so they thought. When confronted with her husband's revised statement, Diane seemed genuinely shocked. "I was working in my home office until about 11, she explained. "I had headphones on, listening to music while I finished some reports. I never heard Robert leave. I thought he was watching TV downstairs." She paused, horror dawning on her face. "You mean we were both gone? No one was listening for Emma?" The investigation expanded to include the family's histories. Diane's first husband had died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Carbon monoxide poisoning in their garage ruled accidental. Robert had a sister who had been institutionalized for severe schizophrenia when she was 19. She'd escaped once years ago and had been found trying to rescue a child from a playground, believing the child was in danger from people who weren't really people. Robert's sister, Margaret Mayers, now 46, had been released from psychiatric care 2 months before Emma's disappearance. Her current whereabouts were unknown. Her last known address was a halfway house 90 miles from Pinewood Creek. 2 weeks after Emma vanished, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Karen Withers, who lived half a mile from the Mayers in a house that bordered the woods, reported finding items in her tool shed. A child's sock, a hairbrush with long dark hair tangled in it, and a sheet of paper with childlike drawings of trees with faces. "I don't go in that shed much," Karen explained, nervously twisting her wedding ring. "It's my husband's domain. He's been away on business for 3 weeks. I only went in because I needed the garden shears." Police searched the wooded area between the Withers property and the Mayers neighborhood. 300 yards into the trees, they found a small clearing where the ground had been disturbed. Buried beneath 6 inches of soil was Emma's other sock, matching the one found in the shed. Ground-penetrating radar revealed no body in the area, but cadaver dogs showed interest in a trail leading deeper into the forest. The trail eventually connected to a service road that, in turn, led to Highway 43. 17 days after Emma's disappearance, security footage from a gas station 50 miles away captured a tall woman with wild, dark hair purchasing a child's coloring book, apple juice, and Band-Aids. Behind her, partially visible, was a small figure in an oversized coat, head down. The image was grainy, but the child's profile resembled Emma's. By the time police reached the gas station, the pair was long gone. The attendant remembered them vaguely. The woman had paid in cash and spoken very little. The kid seemed tired but not scared, he recalled. Called the woman Auntie Meg when asking for the juice. Margaret Mayers, Meg to family, became the prime suspect. Her psychiatric records revealed a fixation on saving children from the hollow people, whom she believed wore human faces but weren't human underneath. In her delusions, these entities specifically targeted quiet, orderly children who could see the truth. The case broke open when a Montana state trooper pulled over a blue sedan with Pennsylvania plates for a broken tail light. The driver, Margaret Mayers, seemed disoriented but cooperative. In the back seat, wrapped in blankets and sleeping, was Emma Mayers, alive and seemingly unharmed. Emma had been missing for 29 days. The psychological evaluation of both Emma and Margaret revealed a complex situation. Margaret genuinely believed she had rescued her niece from danger. Emma, surprisingly, showed no signs of trauma or fear toward her aunt. Instead, she spoke of their adventure with a mixture of confusion and wonder. "Auntie Meg said the scratchy lady was coming through my tree," Emma explained to the child psychologist assigned to her case. "She said my parents couldn't see the scratchy lady because they were grown-ups. Only I could see her, but I was asleep when Auntie Meg came to save me." When asked about the nightgown left in the yard, Margaret became agitated. "Had to give her something," she muttered. "They always take something in exchange, a life for a life, but not Emma's life, not that, never that." Emma eventually returned home to her parents, though the family relocated to another state shortly afterward. Margaret Mayers was committed to a secure psychiatric facility, where she remains today, still insisting she saved her niece from something inhuman that came through the trees. The hair found on the fence was eventually matched to Margaret's. The scratches, investigators concluded, were likely made with a garden tool found in the Withers shed. But one detail remains unexplained to this day. When Emma was finally interviewed alone, months after her return, She described waking up the night she disappeared to see a strange woman standing outside her window. She was very tall, Emma said, and her fingers were too long. She smiled at me through the glass, but her smile went up too high on her face. That's when Auntie Meg came in and told me we had to leave right away. When asked if this was something her aunt had told her to say, Emma looked confused. No, she said, Auntie Meg never saw her, only I did. Then after a pause, sometimes I still see her standing in the trees, but she can't get me now. Auntie Meg taught me the words to keep her away. The case of Emma Mayers was officially closed as a family abduction motivated by mental illness. But in Pinewood Creek, parents began checking their children's windows twice before bed, and somehow, without any formal announcement, all the families with young children moved away from homes that bordered the woods within a year of Emma's return. Detective Loomis, who retired the following spring, kept one piece of evidence in her personal files, a drawing Emma had made during therapy. It showed a tall, thin figure standing beside a tree. Its arms were too long, its fingers like branches. Emma had written across the bottom in careful letters, "She's still looking for someone to take my place." Crime 4, from inside it showed a backyard, but that room was at the front of the house. When opened, there was no breeze, just silence. Beneath the frame, someone had scratched a message into the wood, "Don't wave back." The Porter family moved into the colonial-style home on Sycamore Lane in March of 2018. Millfield, Ohio was exactly what Rebecca and Daniel Porter had been searching for, a quiet town with good schools for their 8-year-old daughter, Emma. The house itself, built in 1927, had character and history etched into its wooden floors and crown molding. It needed work, but Daniel, an architectural designer, saw potential where others might see problems. The previous owners, an elderly couple named the Harrisons, had lived there for 47 years before reluctantly moving to a retirement community in Florida. The sale had been quick, the price surprisingly reasonable for a 4-bedroom home on a tree-lined street within walking distance of Millfield Elementary. Emma chose the smaller bedroom at the front of the house. It had a window seat beneath a large double-hung window, perfect for reading or watching the neighborhood children play across the street. Rebecca thought it odd that such a window would have been installed without screens, but Daniel assured her he would address it once they'd settled in. 2 weeks after moving in, Rebecca was organizing Emma's bookshelf when she noticed something unusual about the window. Standing back, she realized it didn't align with the exterior of the house as it should. From inside, the window provided a clear view of their backyard, the oak tree, the half-finished garden beds, the weathered swing set left by the previous owners. But this room was at the front of the house, facing Sycamore Lane. "Daniel," she called out, "can you come up here for a minute?" Daniel examined the window, pressing his palms against the glass, opening and closing it several times. The outside view remained fixed on their backyard. "It's some kind of projection," he finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe the previous owners installed it for Emma, the Harrisons' granddaughter, I mean. A digital screen disguised as a window." But there were no electrical components visible, no wires, no evidence of modern technology. That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new room, Rebecca searched online for information about the house's history. She found nothing unusual, just records of ownership, tax assessments, and a small article from 1983 about the Harrisons winning a local gardening competition. The next morning, while Daniel was at work and Emma at school, Rebecca decided to examine the window more carefully. She ran her fingers along the wooden frame, feeling the smooth surface worn by decades of hands. Near the bottom, her fingertips caught on something rough, Kneeling down, she saw words scratched into the wood, "Don't wave back." A chill ran through her body as she remembered something Emma had mentioned 2 days earlier at breakfast. "Mom, I saw a girl in the backyard last night. She waved at me from under the oak tree." Rebecca had dismissed it as a dream or the product of an active imagination adjusting to a new home. Now she wasn't so sure. She called Daniel, who promised to come home early to investigate. In the meantime, Rebecca contacted a local historian, Professor Alan Mercer, who taught at Millfield Community College. To her surprise, he agreed to visit that afternoon. Professor Mercer was a slight man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual expression of curiosity. He listened intently as Rebecca explained the situation, occasionally jotting notes in a small leather-bound notebook. "May I see the window?" he asked when she had finished. Standing in Emma's room, Professor Mercer examined the window from various angles. He opened it, closed it, and ran his hands along the frame just as Rebecca had done. "Mrs. Porter," he said finally, "I've lived in Millfield all my life and studied its history for over 30 years. I've never encountered anything like this." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "But there is something you should know about this property." In 1957, 10-year-old Caroline Harrison, the daughter of the previous owners, disappeared from this very room. She was never found. Her parents, Thomas and Alina Harrison, reported last seeing her reading on the window seat before bedtime. By morning, she was gone. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of foul play. The investigation stalled after a few months, Professor Mercer continued. Some believed Caroline had run away, though she had been, by all accounts, a happy child. Others suspected a more sinister explanation, but without evidence, the case eventually went cold. Rebecca felt lightheaded. Why didn't the real estate agent disclose this? After 10 years without resolution, the case was officially closed. Legally, they weren't required to mention it, Professor Mercer explained. The Harrisons remained in the house, perhaps hoping that one day Caroline would return. When Daniel arrived home, Professor Mercer shared what he knew. Daniel remained skeptical, suggesting rational explanations for both the window and the scratched message. "Old houses settle in strange ways," he said. "Light can play tricks, and the message, kids do odd things. Maybe one of the Harrison grandchildren carved it." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., she heard Emma's voice from across the hall. Rising quickly, she found her daughter sitting on the window seat, staring out at the backyard view that shouldn't exist. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" Rebecca asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The girl under the tree," Emma replied without turning around. "She wants me to wave back, but I remembered the words on the window." Rebecca gently pulled Emma away, closed the window, and drew the curtains. "Let's sleep in our room tonight," she suggested, leading her daughter down the hall. The next day, Daniel contacted a contractor to examine the window. Martin Reeves had been renovating homes in Millfield for over 20 years and knew the structural quirks of the town's older buildings. After a thorough inspection, Martin's confusion was evident. "This doesn't make any sense," he admitted. "The window frame is original to the house, but..." He gestured at the view of the backyard. "This isn't physically possible." At Rebecca's insistence, they sealed off Emma's room temporarily, moving her belongings to the guest bedroom. Daniel remained pragmatic, suggesting they consult with specialists in optics or architectural anomalies. 3 days later, Detective Laura Simmons from the Millfield Police Department contacted them. Professor Mercer had mentioned their situation, connecting it to Caroline Harrison's unsolved disappearance. "We never officially closed that case," Detective Simmons explained over coffee in their kitchen. "Every few years, someone reviews the file, but we've never had new leads." She was particularly interested in the scratched message. "Do you mind if I take a look?" In Emma's former room, Detective Simmons photographed the window and the scratched words. "I'd like to bring in a crime scene technician to examine this more thoroughly," she said, "with your permission, of course." The technician arrived that afternoon. Harold Chen had been with the department for 15 years, specializing in evidence recovery. He carefully collected wood samples from around the scratched message and dusted the window frame for fingerprints. "Most of these prints will belong to your family and recent visitors," he explained, "but we might find older ones beneath layers of paint or varnish." 2 weeks passed. Emma adjusted to her new room, though she occasionally asked about the girl under the tree. Rebecca and Daniel avoided discussing the window in her presence. Detective Simmons called with preliminary findings. The fingerprint analysis had revealed something unexpected, a partial print matching Caroline Harrison's school records from 1957. "That's impossible," Daniel said when Rebecca told him. "Those records would be 60 years old." Detective Simmons acknowledged the improbability but stood by the results. "There's more," she added. "We found a photograph in the Harrison family album showing Caroline's bedroom. The window in that image shows a view of Sycamore Lane, the exact opposite of what you're seeing now." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Rebecca and Daniel sat in the sealed room, staring at the impossible window. "What if it's not showing our backyard?" Rebecca whispered. "What if it's showing the backyard from 1957? Daniel didn't respond immediately. He'd been researching Caroline's disappearance, reading old newspaper articles and police reports. "The night she vanished," he said slowly, "witnesses reported seeing a strange man watching the house from under a tree in the backyard." Rebecca's breath caught. The oak tree. "The Harrisons didn't plant that tree until 1960, Daniel continued. 3 years after Caroline disappeared, Eleanor Harrison told neighbors it was a memorial for her daughter. The next day they met with Detective Simmons and Professor Mercer. Together they decided to excavate around the oak tree, a decision not made lightly. The excavation began early on a Saturday morning. Emma stayed with Rebecca's sister in Columbus. By noon, the archaeological team had found nothing unusual. Then at 2:17 p.m., a shout from one of the technicians brought everyone running. 6 feet beneath the oak's roots, they found human remains, small bones consistent with a child of about 10 years. Alongside them was a small silver locket with the initials CH engraved on its surface. Forensic analysis would later confirm the remains belonged to Caroline Harrison. She had suffered blunt force trauma to the skull. The case, cold for 60 years, was suddenly active again. 2 months later, using DNA evidence preserved in the soil and modern genealogical databases, investigators identified Caroline's killer, Thomas Harrison, her own father. He had died in Florida just 3 months before the Porters moved in. The window in Emma's room was replaced. The view now correctly showed Sycamore Lane. The scratched message remained, preserved beneath a layer of clear varnish, a warning from a child reaching across decades. The porter stayed in the house on Sycamore Lane. Rebecca sometimes thought she could see a small figure beneath the oak tree, but she never waved. Some mysteries, even when solved, leave questions that linger in the spaces between what we know and what we can never understand. In Millfield, Ohio, those questions gather in the shadow of an oak tree, planted as both monument and concealment, and in the memory of a window that faced the wrong direction. Crime 5, porcelain white, carefully molded except for the mouth. Human teeth had been glued into the gums, some with fillings. Tucked inside the mask was a list of names and a dried petal. One name had been circled in red, her twin. Rebecca and Rachel Gardner were born 17 minutes apart on a snowy December morning in 1985 in the small town of Pine Haven, Connecticut. Their mother, Alina, often remarked how different they were despite sharing identical DNA. Rebecca was the planner, the responsible one who kept her room immaculate and finished homework days before it was due. Rachel was spontaneous, creative, often losing track of time while painting or wandering through the woods behind their Victorian home. By the time they reached their 30s, the sisters' paths had diverged even further. Rebecca became a dental hygienist at the local practice, married her high school sweetheart Paul, and settled into a modest ranch house just 3 blocks from where they grew up. Rachel pursued art in New York City before returning to Pine Haven 5 years ago, renting the converted carriage house on Old Mill Road, where she created mixed-media sculptures that occasionally sold at galleries in Hartford or New Haven. The sisters maintained what neighbors called a cordial distance. They exchanged birthday gifts, attended the same community events, and smiled politely when they crossed paths at Thornton's grocery. But observant locals noticed they never arrived together, never sat at the same table during the annual Founders' Day picnic. There was always something unspoken between them, said Marjorie Thornton, who had watched the twins grow up through the windows of her family's store. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. That silence would eventually become the centerpiece of a mystery that consumed Pine Haven for months. On Tuesday, April 17, 2023, Rebecca didn't show up for work. Dr. Larson's receptionist called her home when she was 20 minutes late, unprecedented for Rebecca. Paul, who worked night shifts at the power plant, had already left for bed after his 6 a.m. return home. He didn't check his phone until he woke at 3:45 p.m. to 3 increasingly concerned messages from the dental office. I figured she was sick, Paul later told Detective Sarah Mercer, but her car was gone and her toothbrush was still in the holder. Rebecca never goes anywhere overnight without her toothbrush. Occupational hazard, I guess. By 7 p.m., with no word from his wife and no response to numerous calls and texts, Paul filed a missing person report at the Pine Haven Police Department. Officer James Donahue took the report, but didn't seem particularly concerned. Adults go missing all the time, usually by choice, he said, a statement he would later regret. Give her 24 hours, she'll probably call. But Rebecca Gardner didn't call, not that night, not the next day. When investigators finally entered the Gardner home on April 19th, nothing seemed disturbed. Rebecca's purse still sat on the kitchen counter, containing her wallet with $43 in cash and all her credit cards. Her phone, however, was missing. So was her blue Honda Civic. Detective Mercer made the obligatory visit to Rachel's carriage house that same afternoon. The artist appeared genuinely shocked by the news of her sister's disappearance. She hadn't spoken to Rebecca in 3 weeks, she claimed, not since they had briefly crossed paths at the post office. We weren't close, Rachel admitted, her fingers nervously twisting the silver rings she wore on nearly every finger. But this isn't like her. Rebecca doesn't deviate from routine. The detective noted Rachel's use of present tense, a hopeful sign. Family members who unconsciously switch to past tense often sense, on some level, that their loved one is gone. 4 days after Rebecca's disappearance, her Honda was discovered in the parking lot of Riverside Park, a nature preserve 20 miles from Pine Haven. The keys were still in the ignition. Her phone was on the passenger seat, powered off. When technicians charged and unlocked it, Paul knew her password, their anniversary date. They found nothing unusual except a text conversation with a number identified only as R in her contacts. The messages were sparse. We need to talk. About what? You know what, tomorrow, 7 a.m., Riverside. Fine. The timestamps showed the exchange had occurred the night before Rebecca vanished. R was Rachel, of course. When confronted with the messages, Rachel's composure cracked slightly. Yes, she had met Rebecca at Riverside Park that morning. No, she hadn't mentioned this during the initial interview because she thought it would make her look suspicious. They had argued, Rachel admitted, about their mother's estate. Alina had passed away 3 months earlier, leaving the family home to Rebecca. We argued, but when I left, she was fine, Rachel insisted. She was sitting on that bench near the river, making notes in her planner. She was alive. The search of Riverside Park yielded nothing, no planner, no signs of struggle, no witnesses who remembered seeing either twin. April moved into May, and the case stalled. Paul appeared on local news programs, pleading for information. Rachel created a social media campaign with original artwork featuring her sister's face. On June 7th, 7 weeks after Rebecca's disappearance, Paul finally gathered the strength to clean out her closet. That's when he found the box, pushed far into the corner behind winter boots Rebecca wouldn't need until December. Inside was the mask, porcelain white, carefully crafted, with human teeth fixed into the gum line. Police later confirmed the teeth matched dental records from patients at Dr. Larson's practice, all of whom had extractions performed while Rebecca assisted. A disturbing discovery became even more chilling when investigators found the folded paper tucked inside the mask's hollow interior. A list of 7 names written in Rebecca's neat handwriting. 6 had been neatly crossed out. The 7th, circled in red ink, her twin. When detectives returned to Rachel's carriage house with a search warrant, they found her studio in disarray. Half-finished sculptures littered every surface, human forms with distorted features that Detective Mercer described as deeply unsettling. Rachel was gone, but she had left something behind, a journal containing detailed entries about what she called the replacement project. The final entry, dated April 16th, tomorrow it ends, the last replacement, then I'll finally be both of us. As investigators pieced together the fragments of evidence, a disturbing theory emerged. The 6 crossed-out names on Rebecca's list corresponded to missing persons cases spanning 3 states over 7 years. None had been solved. Each person had disappeared without trace. Each had some connection, however tenuous, to the Gardner twins. Forensic technicians found microscopic traces of blood in Rebecca's closet, in her car, and throughout Rachel's studio. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to 3 different individuals, including Rebecca. The other 2 matched DNA collected from family members of people on the list. Rachel's journal suggested a delusional belief that she could absorb the identity of others by creating art from parts of them. The masks police now believed there were multiple were only part of her collection. But despite extensive searches of both properties and the surrounding woods, Rebecca's body was never found. 8 months after the investigation began, hikers in the White Mountains of New Hampshire came across a remote cabin. Inside, they found a woman living alone who identified herself as Rebecca Gardner. She had Rebecca's dental records, Rebecca's fingerprints, Rebecca's DNA. She knew intimate details about Rebecca's life, could describe her childhood home down to the crack in the ceiling above her bed, shaped like a question mark. But her behavioral patterns, writing style, and psychological evaluations all pointed to one conclusion. This was Rachel, somehow transformed. Not physically, the twins were already identical, but mentally, having fully embodied her sister's identity while eliminating all traces of her own former self. The most disturbing evidence came from video footage found on a camera in the cabin. It showed Rachel speaking to someone off screen, describing in detail how she had become each person on her list, practicing their mannerisms, studying their habits before ultimately deciding they were imperfect fits and moving on to the next candidate. The final video, dated April 18th, showed Rachel speaking directly to the camera. "Today I became complete. There is only Rebecca now. Rachel was the final sacrifice." To this day, Rebecca Gardner's remains have never been found. Rachel resides in a secure psychiatric facility, maintaining without wavering that she is Rebecca. The other 6 individuals on the list remain missing. Sometimes in group therapy sessions, she tells other patients about her twin sister who went away. When asked where Rachel went, she smiles and whispers, "She's here. She's always been here, inside me." The staff have removed all mirrors from her room. Crime 6, it was flush with the hardwood, no handle, no seams, but it creaked underfoot. When pried open, it revealed a dark shaft with rope marks along the edges. At the bottom, a stuffed bear wearing headphones and a t-shirt that read, "I heard it all." The house at 327 Maple Avenue had been home to the Caldwell family for almost 11 years. Grace Caldwell, 38, an elementary school teacher with kind eyes and a voice that former students could recognize anywhere, had moved in with her husband Derek when they were newlyweds. Their daughter Eliza, now 10, had never known another home. The house was a modest 3-bedroom colonial in the suburban neighborhood of Riverdale, Connecticut, the kind of place where neighbors waved to each other while collecting mail and children rode bicycles on sidewalks until streetlights blinked on. Derek worked as an architectural designer, often bringing his work home, spreading blueprints across their dining room table well into the night. Grace would bring him coffee, glancing over his shoulder at the lines and measurements that meant little to her. He was methodical, precise, a man who noticed when picture frames were tilted by a 1/4 inch. It was why his colleagues valued him, why their home was immaculately maintained, and why, when Grace first noticed the sound, Derek insisted it was just the house settling. "Old houses breathe," he told her one night in early February as they lay in bed. "The wood expands and contracts with temperature changes." Grace had nodded, though the sound bothered her more than she admitted. It wasn't the typical groan of an aging house. It was localized, always coming from the same spot in the living room floor near the southwest corner by the bookshelf. A hollow creak, like something shifting underfoot, though the hardwood appeared solid and undisturbed. By April, Eliza had begun avoiding that corner of the room while playing. When Grace asked why, her daughter shrugged and said, "The floor is sad there." Children had ways of sensing things adults dismissed. Grace knew this from her years teaching 4th grade. Still, she might have forgotten about it if not for Mrs. Jensen from across the street. You know, the previous owners did some unusual renovations, Mrs. Jensen mentioned one afternoon as they chatted over the fence. Mr. Harmon was quite the handyman, always tinkering, said he wanted to maximize storage space. I remember there was some disagreement with the contractors. Grace found herself researching the home's history that evening. The Harmons had lived there for 22 years before retiring to Florida. Before them, the property records showed several short-term owners, none staying longer than 3 years, unusual for such a desirable neighborhood. The following weekend, while Derek took Eliza to her soccer practice, Grace knelt on the living room floor, running her fingers along the hardwood planks where the sound originated. The wood appeared identical to the surrounding floor, same honey-colored oak, same finish. But when she pressed firmly, she felt a slight give, almost imperceptible. She tapped the area and the sound returned hollow, different from the rest of the floor. Something wasn't right. Grace called her brother Michael, who worked in construction. He arrived that afternoon with tools and skepticism. Old houses have their quirks, he echoed Derek's sentiment, but agreed to investigate. He tapped methodically across the floor, listening for changes in sound, marking spots with painter's tape. After 20 minutes, he outlined a rectangle roughly 3 feet by 4 feet. "There's definitely something here," he said, brow furrowed. "The subfloor's different in this section." Using a pry bar, Michael carefully lifted one plank, then another. The wood came up with surprising ease, revealing what appeared to be a trapdoor, a simple panel with no handle, designed to blend perfectly with the surrounding floor. "This isn't standard construction," Michael said quietly. "This was intentionally concealed." They looked at each other, neither willing to voice what they were thinking. With trembling hands, Grace helped him lift the panel. Beneath was darkness, a shaft approximately 8 feet deep, lined with unfinished wooden walls. A crude ladder made of 2x4s was attached to one side. At the bottom lay a small space, perhaps 5 feet square. The air that rose from the opening was stale but not unpleasant. "I'll go down," Michael offered, retrieving a flashlight from his truck. Grace paced nervously as her brother descended. The sound of his footsteps echoed strangely in the confined space. Then silence. "Michael," she called. "You need to see this," he replied, voice uncharacteristically tight. Against her better judgment, Grace climbed down. The space was larger than it appeared from above, extending slightly under the adjacent dining room. The walls were insulated, and someone had installed rudimentary electrical outlets. In one corner sat a small camping chair. In another, a plastic storage bin contained bottled water and non-perishable food items, all expired by several years. But what captured her attention was the stuffed teddy bear propped against the wall. It wore child-sized headphones connected to nothing, and a faded t-shirt with the handwritten words, "I heard it all," across the chest. Next to it was a notebook filled with dates and times, spanning months, all in the same meticulous handwriting. "Grace," Michael whispered, "there are rope marks on these support beams." Detective Sarah Linden arrived at the Caldwell home 40 minutes after Grace's call. By then, Derek had returned with Eliza. His face had drained of color when he saw the open floor and the gathering of police officers in his living room. Eliza was sent to stay with her grandmother for the night. "How long have you lived here?" Detective Linden asked, her voice professional but gentle. "Almost 11 years, Derek answered, staring at the dark opening in his floor. "We bought it from the Harmons. They were moving to Florida." "And you never knew this was here? Never noticed anything unusual about the floor?" Grace explained about the creaking, the feeling that something wasn't right. Derek remained silent, his architectural training making him the more suspicious party in the detective's eyes. How could someone who designed buildings for a living miss a secret room in his own home? I focus on commercial projects, he explained later, voice hollow, and we've never had any major renovations done. The inspector never mentioned anything unusual. As forensic technicians photographed and collected evidence from the hidden room, Detective Linden conducted background checks on the previous owners. Theodore and Margaret Harmon had indeed moved to Florida, to a retirement community in Naples. No criminal record for either. Theodore had worked as an audio engineer for a local radio station. Margaret had been a kindergarten teacher. The notebook found in the hidden room contained dates and brief notes, conversations overheard, movements tracked. The entries stopped abruptly in October 2012, just months before the Harmons sold the house to the Caldwells. "We need to talk to the Harmons," Detective Linden told her partner. "Something happened here." The investigation took an unexpected turn when detectives discovered that Theodore Harmon had died 3 years earlier from heart failure. Margaret, now living alone, agreed to a phone interview but denied any knowledge of the hidden room. "Ted was always working on the house," she said, "but I don't know anything about a space under the floor. Is this some kind of joke?" Her voice wavered in a way that made the detectives exchange glances. A week later, forensic analysis revealed more troubling details. The rope marks on the beams matched the type of restraints used in kidnappings. Trace evidence of human hair, not matching any member of the Caldwell family, was found in the corner with the camping chair. Most disturbing was what was found inside the teddy bear. A small, outdated digital recording device, its battery long dead. When technicians managed to recover the audio, they found hundreds of hours of household recordings, conversations between Grace and Derek, the sounds of Eliza growing from infant to toddler, phone calls, arguments, moments of intimacy. All recorded without their knowledge, from the time they moved in until approximately 14 months later, when the recordings mysteriously stopped. The final recording was different, a man's voice, breathing heavily, speaking directly into the device. "They don't deserve this house, they don't appreciate what I built. The girl calls my special place the sad corner. She's right, it is sad now, empty. I'm going to take what's mine and leave. They'll never know I was here. They'll never know how close they came." The investigation expanded to include unsolved missing persons cases in the area. 3 cases stood out, young women who had disappeared between 2009 and 2012, all within a 30-mile radius of Riverdale. None had ever been found. Detective Linden showed Grace and Derek photographs of these women. The couple recognized none of them. 2 days later, Margaret Harmon was found dead in her Florida home, an apparent suicide. Her note read simply, "I didn't know at first. When I found out, I made him stop. I made him leave. I'm sorry." The FBI joined the investigation, focusing on Theodore Harmon's activities during the years before the Caldwells purchased the house. They discovered he had worked as a freelance sound engineer, often traveling to record live events across several states. His travel patterns matched with a dozen unsolved disappearances spanning 15 years. The Caldwell family moved out of the house on Maple Avenue, unable to continue living above what they now understood was a carefully constructed holding cell. The home remained empty, its value plummeting despite the real estate agent's attempts to downplay its history. Grace found herself unable to trust solid ground beneath her feet. She would wake in their new apartment, certain she heard creaking from below, straining to listen for breathing in the walls. Derek threw himself into researching their new home's history, checking every inch of the structure for irregularities. Eliza asked only once about the old house. Did the floor ever find what it was looking for? Her parents exchanged glances, unsure how to answer. The investigation into Theodore Harmon continues, with authorities in 3 states reviewing cold cases that might connect to his activities. The recording device found in the teddy bear yielded no fingerprints beyond the Harmons and contained no voices of the missing women. Some questions may never be answered. How many victims had been held beneath that floor? Had any survived? What had caused Theodore to abandon his hidden room? And perhaps most troubling, was he still out there, listening, waiting, planning another space where he could hear it all? For the Caldwell family, the uncertainty remains a weight heavier than any floorboard, a reminder that sometimes the greatest threats lie not in what we find, but in what finds us when we aren't looking. Crime 7, every shelf was empty except for a cooler in the corner, sealed with nails, rusted shut. Inside, jars filled with a pale, chunky liquid, each labeled with a name and the word attempt. One jar held only a tooth and a pink ribbon. Detective Marcus Haynes stood motionless in the garage, his expression unchanged. After 23 years on the force in Coldwater, Michigan, he developed the ability to compartmentalize. But this scene in suburban Maple Street made his stomach turn in a way he hadn't felt since his rookie days. The neighbor called it in, Officer Jensen said, breaking the silence. Mrs. Winters said she hadn't seen a leaner Prentice in over 2 weeks, mail piling up, no lights. Then yesterday she noticed the smell. The house belonged to Alina Prentice, 43, an elementary school nurse who had lived in the neighborhood for just under 3 years. Quiet, they said, kept to herself but always smiled and waved. The type of neighbor who wouldn't intrude but would water your plants while you were away if asked. Alina had grown up in Deerfield, 2 counties over. Her childhood photos showed a girl with auburn hair and a hesitant smile who collected butterfly specimens and played clarinet in the school band. Her father had died when she was 11, heart attack while shoveling snow. Her mother remarried when Alina was 15. By all accounts, she was unremarkable, average, invisible in the way that so many people are. After nursing school, she'd worked at 3 different elementary schools before settling at Coldwater Elementary. Principal Dana Forrest described her as efficient and reliable. Children liked her because she kept lollipops in her desk for after vaccinations and bandaging scraped knees. Nothing in Alina's past suggested what Detective Haynes was now seeing in her garage. "We've checked the house," Jensen continued. "No sign of her, car's gone too. The cooler was padlocked. Forensics had to cut it open." Haynes approached the cooler carefully. The smell intensified, a nauseating blend of spoiled dairy and chemical cleaner that clung to his nostrils. The jars were neatly arranged, 12 in total. Each contained varying amounts of a milky substance mixed with what appeared to be flesh and hair. The handwritten labels bore dates spanning back 18 months. Melissa first attempt, failed. Bethany second attempt, closer. Kate third attempt, too thin. The final jar, labeled Sarah 12th attempt, contained only a child's tooth and a pink ribbon. Detective Haynes called in the forensics team for a more thorough examination of the house, starting with the basement. While they worked, he interviewed the neighbors one by one. No one had noticed anything unusual about Alina, though several mentioned she seemed to become more withdrawn in recent months. Mrs. Winters, the elderly neighbor who had called the police, sat in her floral armchair sipping tea as she spoke to Haynes. Alina was such a quiet thing, always bringing me cookies on Sundays, sugar cookies with almond extract, said they were her grandmother's recipe. She paused, her face clouding. Come to think of it, she'd mention children sometimes, children I'd never seen. She'd say things like, Sarah loved the park today, or Melissa is learning to swim. I assumed she meant students from school. Haynes felt a chill run through him. Did she ever bring these children to visit? No, never. I asked once if she had nieces or nephews, and she just smiled and said, they're mine. I thought perhaps she was fostering. As darkness fell, the forensics team made their discovery in the basement. Behind a false wall, they found a small room containing 12 child-sized dresses, neatly pressed and hanging in a row. Each matched a name on the jars. On a table sat children's books, toys, and a collection of hair brushes, each with different colored hair still caught in the bristles. By midnight, they had pieced together a preliminary theory. Alina appeared to have been systematically abducting young girls, though no bodies had been found. The prevailing hypothesis was that she was attempting to preserve parts of them in the jars, possibly as keepsakes. The investigation expanded rapidly. Detectives combed through missing persons reports from surrounding counties, focusing on elementary-aged girls who had disappeared over the past 18 months. Disturbingly, they found matches for every name on Alina's jars. Melissa Jenkins, age 8, had vanished while walking home from school in Lakeside. Bethany Collins, age 7, disappeared from a playground in Greenville. Kate Summers, age 9, never arrived at her grandmother's house 3 blocks from her own. And Sarah Miller, age 6, had been missing for just 3 days. She had last been seen leaving Coldwater Elementary, where Alina worked. A traffic camera had captured an image of Sarah walking with a woman whose face was obscured by an umbrella in the light rain. The girl wore a pink ribbon in her hair. As dawn broke, Detective Haynes received a call. Alina's Honda Civic had been located at a motel just outside state lines. By the time local police arrived, the room was empty. They found children's clothing in the trash and bleach residue in the bathtub. The FBI joined the investigation. Alina's photo was distributed nationwide. Her bank records showed regular withdrawals of cash over the past year, suggesting she had been planning her escape. Her internet search history revealed research on remote cabins in the Northwest and techniques for changing one's identity. 3 days later, a forest ranger in northern Minnesota reported an abandoned car matching Alina's vehicle description. Inside the glove compartment, they found a journal. The entries were disturbing, detailed accounts of Alina's attempts to preserve what she called the essence of childhood purity. She wrote about a tragedy from her own childhood, the death of her younger sister in a drowning accident when Alina was 13. A sister their mother had tried to erase from their lives, removing all photos and refusing to speak of her again. The journal's final entry read, "Sarah is perfect. She will stay with me forever now. We're going to the place where Angela and I were happy. Mother can't find us there." Detective Haynes recognized the reference immediately. Alina's childhood records mentioned a family cabin near Lake Superior where they had vacationed before her sister's death. Within hours, a tactical team surrounded the dilapidated structure hidden among dense pine trees. They found Alina sitting on the porch, humming softly to herself. She didn't resist arrest. Inside the cabin, in a small bedroom decorated with faded butterfly stickers, they found Sarah Miller alive. The child was disoriented but physically unharmed, her hair freshly cut short and dyed auburn to match Eleanor's childhood photos. Unlike the other children, Sarah had been spared whatever fate had befallen them. When gently questioned later, Sarah said Eleanor had told her she was the perfect one who would stay pure forever. Eleanor had been giving her a sweet-tasting drink each night that made her sleepy. As for the other 11 children, despite extensive searches, no remains were ever found. The contents of the jars proved to be a mixture of animal tissue, preserving chemicals, and small human fragments, hair, nail clippings, and in some cases, teeth. Forensics determined that these were likely taken as keepsakes rather than evidence of murder, though the investigation continued. Eleanor Prentice refused to speak about the missing children. Her only statement, repeated during interrogations, was, "They weren't right, they changed too quickly. Children aren't supposed to change." The case became known locally as the Preserver Killings. Eleanor was diagnosed with delusional disorder and sentenced to life in a high-security psychiatric facility. Detective Haynes visited her once, 6 months after her arrest, hoping to learn the fate of the missing children. She smiled serenely and asked if he'd like to see her butterfly collection. To this day, the families of 11 children wait for answers. The garage on Maple Street remains empty, its contents cataloged and stored in evidence lockups. Sometimes, on warm summer evenings, the neighbors swear they can still detect a faint odor, like rotten milk and bleach, drifting through the quiet streets of Coldwater. And somewhere, perhaps, 11 children wait to be found. Crime 8, the floor was uneven, bulging slightly in the center. When they pulled up a tile, they found a shallow cavity filled with baby monitors, dozens of them, all powered off. One was on, playing a lullaby in reverse. Elaine Carson had lived at 247 Oakwood Drive for nearly 19 years. A quiet woman of 43, she kept to herself in a tidy 2-bedroom ranch house on the outskirts of Millfield, Pennsylvania. Neighbors described her as pleasant but distant, a woman who would wave from her driveway but rarely engaged in conversation beyond weather observations and brief comments about her prized hydrangeas that lined the front yard. Monday through Friday, Elaine worked as an administrative assistant at Millfield Community College. She had been employed there since 2013, and her colleagues knew her as reliable and meticulous. She brought her lunch in the same beige thermal bag, ate at her desk at precisely noon, and left the building at 5:15 p.m. every weekday. She never called in sick. She never stayed late. She never deviated from her schedule. There was something soothing about Elaine's consistency, said Margaret Wellen, who worked in the same office. In a world of chaos, you could count on Elaine being exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was supposed to do. But on Tuesday, April 18, 2023, Elaine did not arrive at work. Her desk remained empty all morning. Her computer screen stayed dark. At 10:47 a.m., Margaret called Elaine's cell phone. No answer. By noon, the office manager had called Elaine's emergency contact, her sister, Diane Carson-Weber, who lived 2 hours away in Pittsburgh. Diane hadn't heard from her sister in 3 days, which wasn't unusual. The sisters spoke weekly, typically on Sunday evenings. "I wasn't immediately concerned," Diane would later tell Detective James Knowles. Elaine valued her privacy. She didn't like being checked on. The police performed a wellness check at Elaine's home at 2:18 p.m. that Tuesday. Her gray 2017 Honda Civic was in the driveway. The front door was locked. Officers knocked, receiving no answer. They peered through windows and saw no signs of disturbance. Nothing appeared out of place. When they entered through an unlocked rear sliding door, the house was silent, too silent. No television hum, no radio, no sounds of movement. The temperature inside was cool, 68 degrees, according to the digital thermostat on the living room wall. Everything was meticulously organized, books arranged by height on walnut shelves, magazines fanned perfectly on the coffee table, a single mug rinsed clean upside down on a dish rack. It felt like a museum, Officer Paula Richardson would note in her report, like no one actually lived there. They found nothing unusual until they reached the master bathroom. The floor was uneven, with several ceramic tiles protruding slightly upward in the center of the room, as if something beneath was pushing them up. When Officer Richardson stepped on one particular tile, it shifted beneath her weight. The officers removed the loose tile, then another and another. Beneath the floor, they discovered a shallow cavity, roughly 2 feet wide and 3 feet long. Inside were dozens of baby monitors, 47 in total, most of them powered off. But one was on, its tiny green light glowing in the darkness, emitting a soft, distorted melody, a child's lullaby playing backward. The bathroom drawers contained standard toiletries. The medicine cabinet held normal prescriptions, lisinopril for blood pressure, loratadine for allergies. Nothing indicated substance abuse or mental health concerns. But in the linen closet, officers found 17 identical white hand towels, each folded in exactly the same way, stacked with mathematical precision. Elaine Carson was nowhere in the house. In her bedroom, her bed was made with hospital corners, not a wrinkle in sight. Her closet revealed clothes organized by color and type, blouses, slacks, cardigans, all in muted tones of beige, navy, and burgundy. On her bedside table sat a leather-bound journal. The most recent entry, dated 3 days earlier on Saturday, April 15, contained only 6 words. They're listening. They've always been listening. Detective James Knowles took over the investigation the following morning. A 24-year veteran of the Millfield Police Department, Knowles had a reputation for thoroughness and patience. He interviewed neighbors, colleagues, and anyone who had regular contact with Elaine. Nobody really knew her, Knowles would later explain during a press conference. She existed in people's periphery. She was there, but not really seen. Craig Bennett, who lived next door for 7 years, recalled only one unusual incident. About 3 months ago, I was taking out my trash when I saw Elaine in her backyard at around midnight. She was just digging a hole with a garden shovel. When she noticed me watching, she waved casually and said she was preparing to plant spring bulbs in January with snow on the ground. Bennett didn't think much of it at the time. People do odd things you don't want to judge. The investigation took an unsettling turn when technicians examined the baby monitors found beneath the bathroom floor. Most were standard models available at any big box store. Store receipts found in Elaine's desk drawer showed she had purchased them over a period of 14 months from various retailers across 3 counties. The one that had been powered on was playing Brahms' Lullaby in reverse. More disturbing was what technicians discovered when they examined its memory, hundreds of hours of recorded audio. The recordings captured conversations, not from inside Elaine's home, but from other houses in the neighborhood. It appears Ms. Carson had been systematically recording her neighbors, explained Detective Knowles. Each monitor was paired with a transmitter. We've since found 17 of these transmitters hidden in various homes throughout the neighborhood, behind outlet covers, inside smoke detectors, beneath window sills. As the investigation expanded, police discovered something else. Elaine Carson wasn't Elaine Carson. Fingerprint analysis revealed her true identity to be Amanda Reeves, who had disappeared from her home in Traverse City, Michigan, in 2004 at the age of 24. Amanda had been a graduate student in audio engineering before she vanished without a trace. Her disappearance had coincided with a series of break-ins across Traverse City where nothing was stolen, but residents reported strange occurrences. Furniture slightly rearranged, food items moved in refrigerators, and in several cases, electronic devices that suddenly picked up phantom voices. Detective Knowles led a thorough search of the property. In Elaine's or Amanda's garage, they found a workbench with specialized tools for electronics modification. A hidden panel in the ceiling contained external hard drives with terabytes of audio recordings dating back 15 years. Some were labeled with addresses, others with names, some simply with dates. The recordings were mundane: family dinners, arguments about bills, children being put to bed, television shows playing in the background, intimate conversations between couples. Life captured in its most unguarded moments. She wasn't blackmailing anyone, Detective Knowles noted. She wasn't using the information for financial gain. She was just listening. The search for Elaine Carson/Amanda Reeves continued for weeks. Her Honda Civic yielded no clues. Her bank accounts showed no recent unusual activity. Her credit cards hadn't been used since the day before her disappearance. Her passport was still in her desk drawer. It was as if she had simply evaporated. Then, 34 days after Elaine vanished, a package arrived at the Millfield Police Department addressed to Detective Knowles. Inside was a USB drive containing a single audio file, a 20-minute recording of Elaine's voice. "I've been listening to others my entire life," the recording began, her voice calm and measured. "I started when I was a child, the neighbors fighting, the babysitter on the phone with her boyfriend, my parents whispering after they thought I was asleep. People say such interesting things when they think no one is listening." The recording continued, detailing how she had become obsessed with capturing authentic human moments, how she had fled her old life after a neighbor in Michigan had discovered one of her recording devices, how she had carefully constructed the persona of Elaine Carson. "I never meant to harm anyone," she explained. "I just wanted to hear the truth. Everyone performs when they know they're being watched or heard. I wanted reality, raw and unfiltered." The recording ended with, "By the time you hear this, I'll be gone, not dead, just gone, starting over, listening to new voices. Remember to check under your bathroom tiles. Remember that someone is always listening." Authorities searched nationwide but found no trace of the woman who had been Elaine Carson. The case remained officially open but inactive. The neighbors whose privacy had been violated struggled with the revelation. Some moved away. Others obsessively checked their homes for listening devices. Trust in the community was fractured. Diane Carson Weber, who had believed for 19 years that Elaine was her sister, was left to reconcile her memories with this new reality. "I don't know who I was talking to all those years," she said, her voice hollow. "Every Sunday night phone call, every Christmas visit, was any of it real?" The bathroom in the house on Oakwood Drive was renovated by the next owners, the tiles replaced, the cavity filled with concrete. But sometimes, when the house is quiet late at night, the new residents swear they can hear a faint melody playing backward, a lullaby drifting through the walls from nowhere at all. As for the woman who called herself Elaine Carson, some say she simply became someone new in some new town, listening to new voices. Detective Knowles keeps a single baby monitor in his desk drawer. Sometimes, when the office is empty, he turns it on, wondering if someday someone might be listening from the other end. Crime 9, an old wooden chair faced the mirror at perfect distance, bolted into the floor unmoving. A headrest had been added, padded with foam. Written in dust on the glass, "She only visits when you sit still." The small town of Millerton, Pennsylvania, had never seen anything quite like it. When the property on 147 Sycamore Lane went up for auction in October 2022, the county assessor cataloging the house's contents called his supervisor immediately. The upstairs bedroom contained this peculiar arrangement: a chair permanently affixed to the floorboards, positioned exactly 4 feet from a large antique vanity mirror. Most disturbing was how the chair had been modified with leather straps attached to the armrests and a crude neck support added to the back. Rebecca Thorne had lived alone in the house for 37 years. Neighbors described her as a polite but intensely private woman who taught piano lessons until her retirement in 2014. After her death from natural causes at age 78, distant relatives in Ohio inherited the property but showed little interest beyond selling it quickly. No one had expected the strange shrine-like setup in what appeared to be a guest bedroom. "She kept to herself but wasn't what you'd call eccentric," said Martin Geller, who had lived across the street for over 20 years. "She'd bring over zucchini bread in the summer, normal stuff, but I can't say I was ever invited past her living room." Police Detective Leanne Mercer was called to examine the bedroom after the county clerk reported the disturbing find. She recalled her first impression of the scene. It wasn't obviously criminal, but something felt ritualistic about it. The precision was unsettling. The chair wasn't just bolted down, it was fixed at a mathematically exact distance from the mirror, and the dust writing on the mirror. That suggested a belief system or delusion we needed to understand. The dust writing appeared to have been refreshed regularly over many years, with traces of older identical messages visible beneath. Forensic analysis later confirmed the message had been rewritten dozens, possibly hundreds of times. Records showed Rebecca Thorne had moved to Millerton in 1985 following the disappearance of her younger sister, Caroline. The sisters had shared an apartment in Philadelphia where Caroline, then 23, was studying art history. One morning in February 1985, Caroline simply didn't show up for her classes. Her roommate, her own sister, reported her missing 3 days later, a delay that raised investigators' suspicions at the time. The investigation into Caroline's disappearance went cold within months. Rebecca, cleared of involvement but forever changed by the experience, relocated to Millerton shortly afterward. She purchased the house on Sycamore Lane with money from their parents' life insurance policy. Detective Mercer's investigation led her to Evelyn Watts, now 82, who had been Rebecca's closest friend in Millerton. When shown photographs of the bedroom, Evelyn wasn't surprised. Rebecca believed she could communicate with Caroline through reflective surfaces, Evelyn explained in a hushed voice during her interview. She started with just staring into mirrors for hours, convinced Caroline was trying to reach out from wherever she was. But around 2001, it changed. Rebecca told me Caroline had finally made contact, but required very specific conditions. The chair was installed shortly after. According to Evelyn, Rebecca believed that absolute stillness was required for these visitations. The bolted chair prevented even the slightest movement that might disrupt the connection. The foam headrest kept her neck comfortable during the long hours of motionless waiting. The straps, Evelyn suggested, were added later to help Rebecca maintain perfect stillness despite fatigue or physical discomfort. She'd sit there for 8, sometimes 10 hours at a stretch, Evelyn said. She kept a journal of these sessions, detailed notes of what she claimed Caroline told her. Detective Mercer's team located 17 journals in a locked drawer beneath the vanity mirror. The handwriting in the early volumes was neat and organized, but became increasingly erratic over time. The entries painted a disturbing picture of a woman consumed by grief and possibly psychosis. The early journals described vague shadows and whispers that Rebecca interpreted as her sister's presence. By 2010, the entries detailed elaborate conversations, Caroline supposedly revealing she had been taken by someone she knew, describing a dark place she was kept, how cold she felt. Later entries claimed Caroline was providing clues about her location and her abductor. Most unsettling were the final journals, where Rebecca wrote about Caroline's requests. The sister allegedly demanded that Rebecca perform increasingly bizarre rituals to maintain their connection, including fasting for days before sessions, burning specific objects, and eventually writing messages in her own blood on the mirror. Forensic testing confirmed that trace amounts of blood were indeed present in the mirror's frame, consistent with someone repeatedly writing on the glass surface over many years. Detective Mercer's investigation took an unexpected turn when she discovered a connection between Rebecca Thorne and Dr. Alan Novick, a psychology professor who had lectured at Caroline's University in Philadelphia. Dr. Novick had moved to a town just 30 miles from Millerton in 1986, barely a year after Rebecca herself relocated. Police records showed that Dr. Novick had been briefly questioned during the initial investigation into Caroline's disappearance, as she had attended several of his lectures and visited his office for academic advice. Nothing came of this line of inquiry at the time. Novick had a solid alibi for the day Caroline vanished and no known motive. What struck Detective Mercer as odd was that neither Rebecca's journals nor any interviews with neighbors ever mentioned this geographic coincidence. Had Rebecca known that her sister's former professor lived so close? Had they maintained contact over the years? When Detective Mercer visited Dr. Novick, now 78 and suffering from early-stage dementia, his wife insisted he had never mentioned knowing either of the Thorne sisters. Yet in his study, Mercer noticed a small framed photograph partly hidden behind family pictures, a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to Caroline Thorne based on the missing person photos from 1985. Further investigation revealed that Dr. Novick had taken a sabbatical exactly when Caroline disappeared, supposedly to work on a book that was never published. Financial records showed unusual cash withdrawals during this period and the purchase of construction materials for what his wife believed was a study renovation. The most damning evidence came from Rebecca's final journal. The last entry, dated just 3 weeks before her death, read, "Caroline showed me his face clearly today. After all these years, I finally understand. It was him, Alan. She's been trying to tell me since the beginning. She's in the walls of his study. The mirror showed me how to find her. Tomorrow I'll go to him." Despite multiple searches of Novick's property, no physical evidence of Caroline Thorne was ever found. Ground-penetrating radar revealed nothing unusual beneath the study floor or in the surrounding property. Dr. Novick died 6 months after Detective Mercer's visit, taking whatever secrets he might have possessed to his grave. The chair and mirror from Rebecca's house were placed in evidence storage, where they remain today. Occasionally, officers report hearing the odd sound of something scratching against glass when passing the evidence locker late at night. The county clerk who first documented the scene swears that when photographing the mirror, he briefly saw a second reflection, a young woman standing behind the chair, though he was alone in the room. The case of Caroline Thorne remains officially unsolved. Rebecca's journals were ultimately dismissed as the products of a grief-stricken, possibly mentally ill woman who invented an elaborate fantasy rather than accepting her sister's disappearance. Yet Detective Mercer keeps a copy of the case file in her desk drawer. Sometimes, late at night when the station is quiet, she finds herself staring into the reflective surface of her computer screen, wondering if Rebecca had discovered something real, if perhaps we just need to sit still enough, long enough, to see the truth hiding within our reflections. The house on Sycamore Lane was eventually sold at a steep discount. The new owners renovated extensively, removing all traces of the bedroom's strange arrangement. But the real estate disclosure forms still contain an unusual addendum. Properties with mirrors exceeding 3x 4 feet may experience unexplained optical phenomena. Homeowner assumes all psychological liability. Story 10. They stumbled upon it in the attic, concealed beneath a worn-out blanket. A porcelain doll, fragile and aged, with its painted blue eyes wide open and unmoving. Neither Sarah nor Michael had any recollection of seeing it before. They dismissed it with a chuckle, a mere overlooked relic. Yet that night, as they settled under their covers, a peculiar sensation lingered in the air. The stillness seemed to stretch endlessly, and come morning the doll had vanished from the attic, now perched at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, had acquired the Victorian house through auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of its troubled past. They were drawn to the stories woven into its very foundation, unaware that they would soon become entwined within its narrative. Detective Rachel Winters received the call on a crisp autumn day. The female victim had been discovered in the master bedroom, her body arranged in an unnatural stance, limbs contorted at precise angles, eyes wide with fear etched upon her face. The male victim was found in the hallway as if attempting to flee. The scene was pristine, no signs of forced entry, no hint of a struggle beyond the final moments. "The positioning is intentional," Detective Winters murmured, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke into her recorder, while crime scene photographers meticulously documented every detail. The female victim seems staged, like a doll plucked from a display case. The investigation commenced with thorough interrogations of neighbors. An elderly woman recounted glimpsing a shadow flitting behind an upstairs window when the couple should have been away at work. Another mentioned hearing what resembled a child's laughter emanating from the silent house in the dead of night. Each tale added another layer of disquiet to the burgeoning case. The forensic team uncovered minuscule fibers throughout the residence, vintage cotton and silk, reminiscent of materials used for antique doll garments, most concentrated around the victims' bodies and the attic space. Yet more unsettling was what they did not find. No fingerprints besides those of the victims, no foreign DNA, no footprints in the dust where they shouldn't have been. "It's as though the perpetrator was never physically present," remarked the chief forensic analyst. The focus shifted to the property's history. Records unveiled a pattern. 3 previous owners over 6 decades had met mysterious demises. Each case remained unresolved, with reports of peculiar anomalies. One family reported stumbling upon antique toys in freshly cleaned rooms. Another documented hearing phantom footsteps in the empty house. Detective Winters unearthed a newspaper clipping from decades past. A famed doll maker had once resided in the house with his daughter. The child's demise was shrouded in suspicion, and the father, though questioned, was never charged. Before taking his own life, he had crafted one final doll, supposedly an exact replica of his daughter. The inventory list from Sarah and Michael's purchase made no mention of such a doll. As Detective Winters delved deeper, she discerned a common thread linking all the victims. Each had made alterations to the house, particularly the attic. Sarah and Michael had commenced renovations the week before their deaths, intending to transform the attic into a workspace. The breakthrough arrived upon inspecting old photographs unearthed from a concealed compartment beneath the attic floorboards. Black and white images depicted the dollmaker with his collection, with one doll standing out identical to the one described in initial reports, the one discovered by Sarah and Michael. In the photographs, the doll appeared in varying poses, almost as if it moved between shots taken moments apart. Infrared scans of the walls unveiled a chilling revelation, tiny unseen handprints trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, along with a peculiar residue identified as porcelain dust blended with unidentifiable organic matter. The case took an unexpected turn when Detective Winters interviewed a distant relative of the dollmaker. The woman divulged family lore about the dollmaker's use of unconventional materials and techniques, allegedly incorporating human elements to infuse life into his prized creations. She spoke of rituals performed to bind spirits to objects, wisdom the dollmaker had acquired during his travels abroad. The most flawless dolls, she murmured, were never intended as mere playthings. Following that revelation, the investigation hit a standstill. No suspects emerged, no conventional rationale aligned with the evidence. The case remained open yet grew cold. Detective Winters requested to retain the doll as evidence, securing it in a locked cabinet at the station. The subsequent morning, officers found her office door slightly ajar, the cabinet emptied. The detective herself was discovered at her desk, bewildered but unharmed, devoid of recollection of the previous night. The security footage showed naught but static during the mysterious hours. The house was auctioned off once more, its tumultuous history driving down the price despite its architectural grandeur. The new occupants found the attic devoid of any presence except for a neatly folded, tattered blanket in the corner. The doll was never recovered, and the deaths of Sarah and Michael joined the roster of unsolved cases occasionally murmured about in the precinct. Some claim to have caught glimpses of it in evidence storage, though inventory checks never confirmed its presence. Detective Winters retired prematurely, citing personal reasons. On her final day, she extracted a solitary item from her personal files, a photograph of the dollmaker with his collection. She sealed it in an envelope labeled "Never Open" and stowed it away. The new owners reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. Yet on tranquil evenings, neighbors would report glimpsing a faint shadow behind the attic window and hearing what appeared to be a child's soft laughter. Story 11. The aging library faced its fate of demolition. The workmen nearly finished dismantling its walls when a serendipitous stumble uncovered a concealed latch within a dusty bookshelf. With a soft click, the entire structure swung open, revealing a narrow passageway leading to a forgotten chamber. The air within was heavy, stagnant with the weight of time. In the center of the barren room sat a solitary chair, firmly bolted to the floor. And etched repeatedly on the walls in desperate script, the haunting words echoed, "I am still here." The foreman overseeing the demolition swiftly contacted the authorities. What had begun as a routine task now took a sinister turn. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, found himself facing a scene unlike any he had encountered before. Standing at the threshold, his flashlight pierced the darkness, casting an eerie glow on the chilling message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice reverberating in the confined space. "No one disturbs a thing until the forensics team arrives." The library's history added layers of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. Once owned by the prominent Harrington family, the library had been bequeathed to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year of college, leaving behind only an abandoned car near the woods, Rebecca's fate had remained an unsolved enigma. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they unearthed hair and fiber samples embedded in the chair, while the scratches on the wall harbored traces of blood and skin cells beneath the layers of neglect. Initial analysis hinted at a young female origin for the biological material. This chair was designed for restraint, the forensic analyst remarked, gesturing to the weathered leather straps affixed to the arms. The occupant put up a fierce struggle. Walsh mobilized a team to delve into the enigmatic history of the Harrington family. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance struck a dissonant chord in his mind. A deeper probe unveiled a disturbing connection. The contractor who installed the bookshelf leading to the hidden room had exclusively worked for Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the family's patriarch. Financial records hinted at exorbitant payments to the contractor, far exceeding standard renovation costs. Interviews with former library staff painted a picture of ignorance regarding the secret space, except for one elderly librarian who recalled Maxwell's peculiar affinity for that secluded corner of the building after hours. Maxwell insisted that area remain untouched during renovations, she recounted to the investigators. He claimed it held historical significance that must be preserved. The investigation took a chilling turn when DNA analysis confirmed the genetic match between the samples from the hidden room and Rebecca's hairbrush found in her old bedroom. The grim timeline began to unfold. Rebecca had not fled. She had been imprisoned behind the bookshelf, possibly by a member of her own family. Armed with a warrant, detectives scoured the Harrington estate, and in Maxwell's study, they stumbled upon a leather-bound journal concealed in a hidden compartment. Journal chronicled months of disturbing entries, revealing Maxwell's twisted fixation on his niece. The final entry sent shivers down their spines. She threatened to expose everything. I couldn't allow that. The room will hold her until she sees reason. Confronted with the damning evidence, Maxwell's facade crumbled. She was a threat to everything, he confessed tonelessly. Rebecca discovered my embezzlement from the family foundation. The family's reputation was at stake. I couldn't let her ruin it. The truth unfurled in all its ghastly clarity. Maxwell had ensnared Rebecca, entombing her in the hidden chamber with the intent of coercing her into silence. But in a fatal struggle, he had extinguished her life. I was consumed by panic, Maxwell admitted in his recorded confession. I buried her beneath the floorboards and sealed the room. Donating the library was my way of ensuring the secret remained buried forever. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of human remains beneath the chamber's floor. A somber excavation unveiled Rebecca's skeletal form, adorned with the silver bracelet her parents had gifted her on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family bore witness to Maxwell's sentencing, finding closure as justice was at last served. Rebecca's mother clutched the bracelet, a tangible link to her lost daughter. The demolition of the library came to an abrupt halt, transforming the site into a sanctuary of remembrance. Community members paid tribute with floral offerings, honoring the life extinguished prematurely and the truth that had waited patiently behind a veneer of normalcy. In a poignant twist, Rebecca's haunting message, "I am still here," etched in desperation on the walls, ensured her enduring legacy and the eventual triumph of justice, no matter how long delayed. Story 12. The gentle current whispered its lullaby that morning, the water shimmering like a sheet of glass, undisturbed by the world's chaos. The lone fisherman, lost in his thoughts, almost missed the peculiar sight of a suitcase floating near the shore. At first glance, he assumed it was just a pile of discarded clothes abandoned by the careless tide. But as he approached, a foul smell crept into his senses, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The suitcase was bound in chains, its once sharp edges now softened by the relentless kiss of rust. When the authorities pried it open, they were met not by garments, but by a haunting sight. Long strands of hair intertwined with fingers frozen in a final grasp, and at the very bottom, a chilling note whispered, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, shrouded in a veil of mystery, pressed a delicate handkerchief to her nose as she surveyed the somber scene. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and now pale skin, bore the marks of her watery journey. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously catalogued every detail before the body was tenderly taken away. It wasn't the gruesome manner of disposal that gripped Mercer's mind, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been prepared. Manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in luxurious attire. She wasn't brought here to be killed, Mercer mused softly, her gaze fixed on the tranquil waters caressing the muddy bank. She was arranged like a macabre exhibit. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a real estate agent renowned for her dealings in exclusive properties. Divorced, childless, she dwelled in solitude within the embrace of an upscale neighborhood. Her colleagues painted a portrait of ambition, precision, and secrecy. Her disappearance had been flagged by her assistant when she failed to grace a crucial showing for affluent clients. She wouldn't miss that appointment, the assistant insisted, her voice unwavering during interrogation. That sale would have been her crowning achievement. The investigation unfurled within Walsh's modernist abode, everything pristine, almost unnaturally perfect. Designer pieces arranged with almost mathematical precision. Not a speck of dust dared to mar any surface. The kitchen harbored neatly labeled meals, organized by the day. Her wardrobe a symphony of hues, each garment carefully sheltered in protective coverings. Yet a whisper of disarray lingered in her home office, a drawer slightly ajar. Within, a leather-bound journal lay in silent repose. The final entry etched hauntingly, "He's watching again, same car, different plates." A digital pilgrimage through Walsh's online presence unveiled an unsettling pattern: emails from anonymous senders, all bearing the same eerie message, "I see your perfection." Sent with chilling regularity, each missive a chilling echo of the other. Her browsing history, a breadcrumb trail of inquiries into home security systems and self-defense tools. Mercer wove these threads together: the meticulous presentation of the victim, the eerie messages as she confided in her partner, "Our culprit is not driven by rage, but by ritual." The pivotal moment emerged from an unexpected source, a local pawnshop proprietor recognizing Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among his wares. The man who had pawned it, a nondescript maintenance worker named Michael Linden. Surveillance footage unveiled his recurring visits to Walsh's building, sometimes with his cart of tools, sometimes without a ghost in the shadows, haunting her sanctuary. Linden's modest dwelling unveiled a chilling gallery walls adorned with snapshots of Walsh and other women, all bearing a striking resemblance, all captured without their knowledge. Some faces were marked with a scarlet X. Walsh was the third victim in his twisted tapestry. Concealed behind a false wall, a shrine, emerged a collection of mementos belonging to each victim. A lock of hair, a tissue stained with lipstick, receipts, keys, a macabre catalog of their lives. Each item cocooned in a small notebook chronicling their routines, preferences, quirks. The interrogation room turned frigid as Linden was confronted. calm, composed, his demeanor belied the darkness within. "They were flawed," he intoned, his voice devoid of emotion. "They paraded as flawless, but I saw the truth." Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray, her lipstick never quite perfect. Her perfection was a facade. The pursuit of the victims referenced in his cryptic note unveiled 2 more suitcases, each cradling a woman akin to Walsh real estate agents promoting an aura of unattainable perfection. In the courtroom, Lyndon sat motionless, an enigma in human form, as the prosecution unfurled his sinister methods. Months of stalking, of infiltrating their lives, of crafting his twisted version of perfection before claiming their lives. The families of the victims stood in silent vigil as justice rendered a lifetime behind bars, a sentence devoid of redemption. For Detective Mercer, the case was sealed shut, yet a shroud of queries lingered in the shadows. What darkened mirror did Lyndon seek to polish by obliterating these women? What imperfection within himself did he seek to erase through his macabre acts? The river of time flowed onward, its waters carrying away all traces of the past. But in the precinct upon Mercer's desk lay copies of those chilling notebooks, a silent testament that beneath the veneer of normalcy, a sinister underbelly may lurk. And in the stillness of night, behind closed doors, malevolence may don a mask of perfection, waiting for a solitary flaw to expose the predator within. Story 13. She wiped away the mist on the mirror, peering at her reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her face, her attire all familiar. Yet a sense of unease crept in as she gazed longer. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not her own. Turning away, she expected her reflection to follow suit, but it remained motionless, observing her. Thus began the enigmatic tale of Rebecca Thorne, unfolding from that unsettling moment in her bathroom. What transpired next would bewilder investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Residing alone in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave, Rebecca was known to be methodical and introverted. She led a life governed by routine and precision, working as a data analyst for a mid-sized company. No one could have foreseen that she would emerge as the focal point of one of the most perplexing criminal mysteries of the decade. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's abode began to shift inexplicably, nothing missing, just rearranged. A coffee mug relocated to a different shelf, books shuffled around, her toothbrush moved to an unfamiliar spot. Initially dismissing these occurrences as lapses of memory induced by long hours spent immersed in spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights, Rebecca slowly grew unsettled. It wasn't until weeks of these disturbances had passed that she finally reached out to authorities, prompting Detective Marion Shaw to enter the picture. Upon the first assessment, the situation seemed devoid of criminal intent, more suited for mental health services than law enforcement. With no concrete evidence, no signs of forced entry, missing items, or broken locks, Shaw categorized it as a non-priority case. There were no tangible leads, Shaw would later recount, just a woman sensing an unsettling presence within her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the mirror incident in the bathroom. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted the eerie experience vividly, how her reflection appeared to move independently, how a pervasive sense of being watched enveloped her even in solitude. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, trained on her front door. The video unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. It captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, only to show an exact replica of her entering the apartment 20 minutes later, using a key. Forensic scrutiny of the footage revealed no signs of tampering or digital manipulation. The The doppelganger moved, dressed, and carried herself just like Rebecca, down to the minutest details. Yet, according to time-stamped footage from her workplace, Rebecca had already checked in at her office across town. "We are facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Miss Thorne and can mimic her with uncanny precision." The investigation kicked into high gear. Fingerprints found throughout the apartment matched only Rebecca's, with no foreign DNA detected. Neighbors reported routine sightings of Rebecca, nothing amiss, just her comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recalled greeting Rebecca upon her return home one evening, receiving no response, a departure from the norm but not alarming. Becca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space began to escalate. Unexplained disappearance of food from her fridge, searches on her computer she hadn't conducted, and most disconcerting, selfies on her phone bearing her likeness but taken without her recollection. In some images, her expression seemed subtly awry, the smile too wide, the eyes too intense. "I feel as if I'm losing my mind," she confided in Detective Shaw during their third meeting. Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this illusion. A breakthrough emerged as investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only made appearances when Rebecca left for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, pre-planned activities with predictable durations. "Someone intimately knows your schedule," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't arbitrary, it's a calculated form of surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist postulated that they were dealing with a fixation case, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, gradually aiming to supplant her entirely. Though uncommon, such cases had been documented in psychological annals. The perpetrator typically experienced a psychological rupture, fixating on a victim embodying traits they desired: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus of the investigation narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had worked closely with Rebecca, often remarking on the similarities between them. Post-dismissal, she had sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, one of which read, "We could be twins. Sometimes I feel I'm more you than you are." Armed with a search warrant, Detective Shaw and her team scoured Lily's residence. A discovery awaited them that would elevate the case from disconcerting to chilling. One room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were adorned with countless images of Rebecca, captured unknowingly while entering her apartment, shopping, socializing. The closet harbored replicas of Rebecca's clothing, makeup from her preferred brands lined up on a vanity, accompanied by meticulous notes detailing her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. The most damning evidence surfaced in the form of practice videos, where Lily emulated Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The evolution was clear. Initial attempts were clumsy and overt, later ones nearly indistinguishable from the genuine article. "She aspired to inhabit my skin," murmured Rebecca upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating me, she was eradicating me." Forensic experts uncovered sophisticated tools for crafting key copies and duplicating electronic access cards. Lily had devised an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, complete with a calendar projecting her schedule in meticulous detail. What eluded investigators was Lily's endgame. Journals unearthed in her residence contained incoherent entries oscillating between first and third person, occasionally alluding to Rebecca as both me and her within the same passage. The final entry sent a shiver down their spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger version will prevail." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished without a trace. Her abrupt departure was evident in her deserted apartment drawers left ajar, certain devices missing. A nationwide alert was issued, and Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, every site linked to her former life was under vigilant watch, yet Lily remained elusive. The case took a chilling twist when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave and under protection in a guarded safe house, Rebecca had been spotted entering the building. Subsequent security footage confirmed the unsettling truth. A doppelganger of Rebecca had used a valid ID card to access the premises, proceeded to her former workstation, and sifted through her files for 40 minutes before departing. It was an impossibility for Rebecca to be present, raising a chilling realization. Lily hadn't fled, she had enacted her scheme. She had assumed Rebecca's identity, seamlessly stepping into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unresolved to this day. Lily Winters remains at large, evading capture. Rebecca Thorne chose not to reclaim her past life, opting for new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw retains a photograph on her desk, a snapshot of two astonishingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking nuances that would set one apart from the other. The truly petrifying aspect Shaw imparts to fresh recruits isn't someone mirroring your appearance or voice. It's the desire to assume your identity so fervently that they obliterate their own existence in the process. Identity is not merely how we present ourselves to the world, it's what we safeguard most zealously, and sometimes its true value only surfaces when someone endeavors to pilfer it. Story 14. In the quiet stillness of the night, the new tenants of the Victorian-era home, Michael and Sarah Klein, embarked on a journey they never anticipated. It all began innocently enough with what seemed like just peeling wallpaper in the master bedroom. A subtle water stain caught Sarah's eye, a yellowish hue spreading across the floral patterned paper. Curiosity led them to investigate further, peeling back layer after layer, uncovering a hidden story beneath the surface. Beneath the dated paisley and striped wallpaper of decades past, they stumbled upon something unexpected, a name scrawled in dark ink. Eleanor Winters, it read, repeated over and over in a frantic, uneven script that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. Sarah's fingers traced the name, her voice barely above a whisper as she questioned the identity behind those haunting words. As the night deepened, Michael found himself immersed in a digital search, delving into the depths of the internet in pursuit of answers. Property records yielded no trace of an Eleanor Winters connected to the house, only the name Margaret Cavendish, the enigmatic woman who had sold them the home. But a digital archive revealed a chilling link, a missing persons case from 30 years past, featuring a young woman with dark hair and striking eyes, resembling Margaret in an uncanny manner. Their once serene abode morphed into a nexus of mystery and intrigue, drawing the couple into a web of obsession as they sought closure for a long-forgotten tragedy. Sarah's determination led her to unravel the threads of the past, tracing Margaret Cavendish's brief ownership of the house back to a series of covert transactions and unanswered questions. The retired detective's recollections cast a shadow of doubt over their reality as the pieces of the puzzle began to align in a disconcerting fashion. Forensic teams descended upon their home, meticulously examining the cryptic writings on the wall and unearthing hidden truths buried within the very foundation of the house. Beneath the floorboards of the bedroom closet lay a trove of secrets, a collection of identification cards bearing different names, each bearing the visage of a woman with ever-shifting identities. The revelation of a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, entwined with the fate of Alina Winters, sent shivers down their spines as the boundaries between truth and illusion blurred. The excavation of their backyard marked a turning point in the investigation, as the remains of Alina Winters emerged from the depths of the earth, a somber confirmation of a long-held secret. Rebecca Eldridge, alias Margaret Cavendish, stood at the threshold of truth and deception, her fractured mind a labyrinth of conflicting personalities and hidden motives. In a moment of reckoning, the walls of the house bore witness to a confession long overdue. Rebecca's fragmented psyche had woven a tapestry of deceit and despair, the scrawled name a testament to a fractured soul seeking redemption in the shadows of her past. As the truth unraveled, justice prevailed, unveiling a tale of tragedy and betrayal that echoed through the halls of the Victorian-era home. For Michael and Sarah, the whispers of the walls became a haunting melody, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their dream, home a place where the past intertwined with the present in a dance of secrets and revelations. Story 15: The Enigmatic Manor. The new residents of the old Victorian manor didn't think much of the crackling intercom system that came to life in the dead of night. They saw it as a quaint quirk, a relic from a bygone era that had been rewired but left to gather dust in obscurity. It wasn't until one fateful night when the husband, consumed by curiosity, dared to press the button that everything changed. A whisper, faint and ethereal, crackled through the speaker, sending a shiver down his spine. "Why did you come back?" it murmured, a question that seemed to echo from centuries past. Startled, he recoiled, his hands trembling as his wife, standing silently behind him, denied ever speaking those words. The manor, nestled amidst ancient oak trees, exuded an aura of mystery and intrigue. Its exterior, weathered by time, belied the modern elegance within, a juxtaposition that intrigued the new owners, Daniel and Meredith Parker. The couple had been drawn to the property not only by its history, but also by the unique feature of the intercom system that interconnected all the rooms. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but there was an unspoken sense that there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, his complexion ghostly in the dim light of the porch, led the detective through the grand foyer, recounting the strange events that had unfolded since they moved in. "It all started with the intercom," he explained, his voice tinged with unease. Static whispers, then full sentences. My wife thought I was losing my mind until she heard it too. In the living room, Meredith sat stiffly on an antique sofa, her grip on a steaming mug betraying her inner turmoil. Without preamble, she revealed the shocking discovery they had made hidden behind a wall, a small leather-bound journal that had lain undisturbed for decades. As Detective Reeves carefully perused the journal's delicate pages, she unraveled the haunting tale of Alina, the journal's author and the manor's previous inhabitant. The entries spoke of her growing apprehension towards her husband, Vincent, hinting at sinister intentions that ultimately led to her disappearance 30 years prior. The investigation unearthed the dark truth of Vincent and Alina Blackwood's tumultuous past. Vincent, now a frail old man residing in a care facility, confessed to the heinous crime when confronted with irrefutable evidence. His chilling admission revealed a meticulously crafted facade to deceive all who crossed his path. The trial swiftly concluded with Vincent's guilty plea, the judge acknowledging the calculated nature of the crime and the web of lies spun over decades. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the manor's grim history, sold the property, bidding farewell to the echoes of the past that haunted its halls. Before parting ways with the manor, they held a solemn memorial for Alina in the garden, a final gesture of closure amidst the shadows of the past. The intercom system, a conduit for long-buried secrets, was dismantled by the new owners during renovations, silencing its enigmatic whispers forever. Detective Reeves revisited the case file, pondering how the house itself had played a pivotal role in unraveling the truth. The tale of the manor, dubbed the house that answered back among law enforcement circles, served as a haunting reminder of the voices from beyond that refused to be silenced. As Detective Reeves occasionally passed by the manor on her way home, she couldn't help but slow down, the window cracked open ever so slightly, listening intently for any lingering whispers that may still drift through the air, carrying fragments of a story long buried in the shadows of time. Story 16. Once upon a time, a house stood silent and empty, shrouded in whispers of a young woman who vanished without a trace. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of her disappearance, of how the house had remained uninhabited for years, holding its secrets within its walls. But when the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a chilling mystery waiting to be unraveled. The bedroom, once locked from the inside, exhaled a breath of stale air heavy with the weight of time. Dust danced in the faint light that filtered through the curtains, casting shadows of forgotten memories. Yet amidst the stillness, something stirred a feeling that lingered like a ghostly presence. The bed stood neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges, and on the desk a lone candle had surrendered to time, its wax frozen in place like tears shed in solitude. As the tenants navigated the room's silent echoes, their eyes fell upon a notebook resting open, its pages whispering untold secrets in fresh ink. Detective Morgan, with a keen eye for unraveling mysteries, delved into the notebook's depths while forensic technicians meticulously combed the room for hidden truths. The handwriting, elegant and precise, belonged to Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the shadows 5 years prior. The notebook spoke of haunting words penned on the night of her disappearance, of a chilling premonition that danced on the edges of reality. "I know he's watching me tonight," the final entry confessed, a plea for help lost in the void of disbelief. Detective Morgan closed the book gently, the weight of Elise's words heavy in the stillness of the room. The landlord, a figure frozen in the doorway, bore witness to a truth he could not comprehend. "We checked every room," he murmured, his voice tinged with unease. But the locked door, a portal to a past forgotten, held secrets that refused to be silenced. Elise, a paralegal with a sharp mind and a quest for justice, had stumbled upon a web of deceit within the corridors of power. Her supervisor's words echoed in the detective's mind, painting a portrait of a woman on the brink of unveiling a truth that threatened to shake the foundations of power. The room, a silent witness to Elise's final moments, yielded little in the way of answers. No signs of struggle, no traces of violence, just a snapshot frozen in time, a moment waiting to be unfurled. The unscented candle, a sentinel of forgotten whispers, held secrets within its blackened wax. Forensic experts unearthed hidden truths as they peeled back layers of deception. Behind a loose floorboard, a revelation awaited a key, a flash drive, and a path to a truth long buried. The documents within spoke of corporate greed, of manipulated data, and a medication tainted by lies. The truth, like a river flowing unseen, led to the doorstep of Vincent Harriman, a man cloaked in shadows of his own making. The evidence, a tapestry woven with threads of deception and betrayal, painted a portrait of a man willing to do anything to protect his secrets. Justice, a silent guardian in the shadows, whispered of its arrival as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Through hidden passages and concealed truths, the room bore witness to the unraveling of a sinister plot. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and privilege, stood exposed in the harsh light of truth. The courtroom, a stage for justice long delayed, echoed with the voices of the fallen and the whispers of the past. Elise's mother, a beacon of strength in a sea of darkness, spoke of her daughter's unyielding pursuit of truth, a legacy etched in the silence of her untouched room. The house, a silent sentinel of forgotten dreams, stood empty once more, its walls echoing with the echoes of a young woman's courage. Locals, haunted by the specter of injustice, avoided its gaze after nightfall, a testament to the power of a truth waiting to be found. In the upstairs window, a light flickered like a beacon in the night, a silent tribute to a woman who stood against the shadows of power. Elise Winters, a name etched in the annals of justice, found her peace in the room she never truly left, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Story 17. In the old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through the pipes and floorboards, creating an eerie atmosphere. The new tenant, however, sensed a difference in the noises she heard. The footsteps above her were too steady, too intentional, despite her residing on the top floor. One night, overcoming her apprehension, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased abruptly, leaving a lingering silence. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the knocking episode to herself, attributing it to the building's settling or a possible animal intruder in the attic. As the relentless footsteps continued their haunting routine each night, she adapted by increasing the volume of her TV, sleeping with headphones, doing anything to mask the rhythmic footfalls tracing unseen paths across her ceiling in the darkness. Detective Morris was drawn into the story when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Removing a section of drywall near Sarah's apartment to repair a leak, the worker uncovered a narrow passage unaccounted for in the building plans. Within a makeshift living space was found evidence of someone's secret existence: food wrappers, water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small journal. Upon the police's arrival, Detective Morris and his partner encountered the shaken worker, who repeated, "Someone's been living in the walls, watching." The journal held meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routines, visitors, meals, and even her sleeping patterns. The neat handwriting deteriorated into chaos, with strange symbols scrawled in the margins. The final entry read, "The subject no longer responds to my signals. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams delved into the crawl space, uncovering fingerprints with no matches in any database. They discovered a complex network of passages interwoven within the building's walls and ceilings, some dating back decades. These passages linked 5 apartments but terminated in observation points disguised as fixtures, only in Sarah Coleman's residence. Interviews with current residents yielded no unusual occurrences, but former tenants shared unsettling experiences. 3 previous occupants of Sarah's apartment recounted feeling watched or hearing inexplicable sounds. One tenant left after a mere 2 weeks, afraid of sounding paranoid if they spoke up. The case took a pivotal turn when forensics detected microscopic blood spatter, matching it to Martin Weaver, a previous resident who had vanished mysteriously 4 years prior. Martin had lived directly below Sarah's apartment. Investigating further, Detective Morris discovered a pattern in Martin's disappearance after he confronted a reclusive neighbor named Edward about noises from above. Shortly after, Martin disappeared, and Edward vacated his unit without a trace. Delving into Edward's history, investigators unveiled a series of nomadic rental patterns over 2 decades, always selecting top-floor units, shunning social interactions, and disappearing suddenly. At a remote cabin owned by Edward, a chilling collection of photos, notes, and journals detailed the surveillance of apartment residents, including Sarah and Martin. Maps of building structures, missing persons reports, and journals chronicling habitats were found. Cadaver dogs led investigators to multiple graves behind the cabin, unearthing the remains of Edward's victims. Meanwhile, forensic anthropologists worked tirelessly to identify the deceased. Returning to Sarah's building, the crawl spaces were sealed off, but residents still reported odd noises. During security system installations, a second notebook was discovered, a note inside hinting at a new hiding place. Upon finding Sarah's apartment deserted, a cryptic message on the bathroom mirror hinted at a hidden presence. The hunt for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a construction worker turned recluse, intensified. Though thermal scans showed no current occupancy in the walls, Sarah remained missing, her case intertwined with similar disappearances across state lines. Detective Morris, haunted by the thought of Sarah's solitary nights, contemplates the chilling echoes of those footsteps above her. The unsettling notion of someone unseen listening and waiting pervades his thoughts, and as he sits alone in his home, he too finds himself gazing up at the ceiling, pondering the silent watchers in the shadows. Story 18. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints remained silent on the matter. Yet as the family unraveled the worn carpet, a hidden door revealed itself, adorned with a heavy, rusted handle. It took the combined effort of 3 to pry it open, releasing a wave of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending steps beckoned them into the darkness below. Anticipating storage space, they were met instead with a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting shadows that danced across the walls, adorned with a row of photographs of them. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban home during the bleak winter months, where shadows lingered longer and the trees stood bare against the cold sky. The aged 2-story structure exuded character and history, a narrative they had eagerly embraced. Little did they foresee the depth of history woven into the very fabric of their new abode, or how violently it would intertwine with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene alongside her partner, the crime scene unit already at work, enclosing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled over the phone as she recounted the unsettling discovery hidden beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else ventures down there," Connors directed, slipping on latex gloves with practiced ease. The flashes of the camera illuminated the stairwell in sporadic bursts as the forensic team meticulously recorded the scene. The wooden steps groaned under their weight as they descended into the dimly lit basement, a space not much larger than a standard bedroom, its concrete walls painted a somber gray. The solitary chair bolted to the floor took center stage beneath the harsh glow of the bare bulb above. Yet it was the chronological arrangement of 37 photographs that seized their attention. "These date back nearly 4 weeks," remarked Connor's partner, scrutinizing the timestamps on the prints. "Look here, Mrs. Mercer asleep on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms." The investigation unveiled no signs of forced entry, no evidence of theft or vandalism, only a profound invasion of privacy and a disquieting breach of security. Forensics uncovered a multitude of fingerprints, most belonging to previous occupants of the house, which had changed hands numerous times in the past decade without any mention of a basement. As they delved deeper into the house's history, the case took on an increasingly sinister tone. Inconsistencies marred the property records, with blueprints altered between sales, permits withdrawn, and inspection reports redacted. The pivotal moment came during an interview with the contractor responsible for the house's renovation 7 years prior. His pallor drained at the sight of the basement photos. "That room is non-existent," he asserted, hands trembling. "I gutted that space to its core." There was no basement, no door, nothing beneath the living room but soil and concrete. Digital forensics uncovered a treasure trove of images from a concealed memory card within the light fixture. Hundreds of snapshots adorned the evidence board, not just of the Mercers, but of past families as well. Children slumbering, parents bickering, intimate moments captured in time. The gravity of the case intensified with the recovery of audio files from a weatherproof box secreted in the basement. Conversations from the master bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, all clandestinely recorded with sophisticated microphones that had eluded the initial search. "We must dissect every wall," Connors urged with palpable urgency. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years." Beyond the photograph-covered wall, investigators unearthed a narrow passage leading to a monitoring station, a desk, a chair, a laptop linked to wireless cameras, and a journal brimming with meticulous observations on each family that had dwelled within the house. Their routines, their conflicts, their vulnerabilities, all meticulously chronicled. The journal's script bore a striking resemblance to that of Edward Kelvin, the house's original builder who, according to records, had perished during its construction under suspicious circumstances. The final entries veered into paranoia, with recurring phrases like "they never look down" and "they never see me." The last page ominously proclaimed, "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis corroborated their suspicions. Edward Kelvin had never departed the house he had erected. Instead, he had receded into its shadowy recesses, constructing a labyrinth of observation points to clandestinely watch the families who believed themselves secluded. The manhunt spanned 3 days before they unearthed Kelvin nestled within a crawlspace between the second floor chambers, his emaciated form accustomed to navigating the narrow passages he had engineered within the walls. His eyes blinked warily under the piercing beams of the flashlights, unaccustomed to direct sunlight. During interrogation, Kelvin expounded on the families as mere players in his private drama, observed with the detached scrutiny of a scientist studying specimens. He professed to never intrude, never pilfer, never disrupt their lives, only to watch, record, and document. "They welcomed me in," he claimed in a soft, rational tone. "They signed the documents, they became mine." A psychological evaluation unveiled Kelvin's severe delusions, wherein he viewed himself as a custodian of the house rather than an interloper. The families, in his distorted perception, were transient guests in what he considered his eternal abode. The Mercers, like their predecessors, deserted the property, forsaking their possessions and fleeing with only what they could carry. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the trial laid bare the extent of Kelvin's voyeuristic network, secret chambers accessible solely through crawlspaces, surveillance points seamlessly integrated into the edifice, meticulously devised even before the initial brick was laid. The house had been architected as a shrine to observation, its inhabitants unwitting participants in Kelvin's obsessive documentation. Upon the jury's verdict, Kelvin remained impassive, already ensconced within the recesses of his psyche, where he could still traverse the unseen passages of the house now relegated to memory. The property was eventually razed, its subterranean depths excavated and filled. Yet, for those who had called it home, the intrusion endured. They were tormented not by what had been filched from them, but by what had lurked unseen, watching, listening, recording their most intimate moments from within the walls that they had entrusted to safeguard them. In moments of hushed contemplation, they found themselves gazing up at air vents, light fixtures, the junctures where walls met ceilings, questioning if they were truly solitary now, questioning if they ever truly had been. Story 19. The town never whispered about the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows veiled in darkness, its porch bowed beneath the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one recalled its builder. But when a cluster of hikers meandered too near, they stumbled upon something eerie, names etched into the wooden panels, carved deep like omens. At the end of the list, fresh and unscathed, was a name unfamiliar to all, until a whisper, quivering, broke the silence. "That's mine." The call came in under the cloak of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice on the line belonged to Mason Wright, the lead hiker who unearthed his name etched into the forsaken house. The responding officers anticipated mere teenage mischief, perhaps a jest among companions, yet what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as nightfall draped the forest. Her flashlight's beams sliced through the shadows, revealing the weathered front of the building. The names 27 in total trailed vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded with time, nearly vanishing against the somber wood. Others remained sharp, as if freshly carved. And at the bottom, Mason Wright, the incision still bearing hints of new sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath materializing in the frigid air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with background checks on each listed name. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others lingered active. All shared a chilling commonality: the persons vanished while trekking alone. Forensic analysts captured photographs of each carving, cataloging the varied depths, techniques, and aging patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years prior. The case files recounted a young woman who ventured into these very woods and never returned. Search parties discovered naught but a lone hiking boot beside a stream. Detective Keller delved deep into Mason's narrative. His tale remained unwavering. He had no ties to the area beyond this hiking expedition with 4 college comrades. They had selected the trail at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his background tied him to any of the other names on the wall. The focus shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots taken during their hike. Upon scrutiny, analysts observed something unsettling. A blurred figure loomed in the backdrop of 3 distinct photos. The form resembled a slender, tall man, perpetually obscured by trees. "We encountered no one else on the trail," Emily insisted. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller mandated a search of the house's interior. The edifice appeared deserted. Dust draped every surface. Furniture lay shattered and strewn. However, in the basement, officers stumbled upon a disconcerting tableau. Personal effects belonging to the missing hikers were methodically arranged on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a name corresponding to the wall outside. The evidence team toiled meticulously, documenting every item. Beneath ultraviolet light, bloodstains materialized on the concrete floor, years of marks someone had endeavored to erase. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies interred beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs signaled repeatedly near the forest's densest thicket. As the probe intensified, Detective Keller noted peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began reporting uncanny incidents, whispers beyond his apartment, footprints in fresh snow leading to his doorstep but vanishing on the return journey, silhouettes observing from the street. The department assigned an officer to safeguard him, yet Mason's paranoia mounted. The breakthrough arose when researchers unearthed land records buried in county archives. The house had belonged to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting fleeting encounters with an unsettlingly tall, gaunt man averse to discourse. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance uninvestigated. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the adjacent forest. The search party uncovered a network of rudimentary hunting blinds strategically placed along popular hiking trails. Inside one, they unearthed a journal containing meticulous observations, depictions of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script matched samples from Victor Blackwood's scant existing documents. The journal entries grew increasingly disturbing over time. Initial pages delineated hunting methods for animals. Subsequent entries depicted humans as prey, their behaviors, weaknesses, and tactics for their acquisition. The final pages chronicled elaborate accounts of stalking each victim on the wall, including intricate narrations of how he singled out his targets. The hunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical teams meticulously combed every cavern and ravine, yet no trace of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased all communication. Officers dispatched to his residence found the entrance ajar, the rooms vacant. On his bedroom wall, freshly carved, stood a solitary line: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The pursuit of Mason persisted for weeks to no avail. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's dwelling, forensic technicians unearthed a chilling revelation. Concealed behind a false panel in the basement, they uncovered a small workshop equipped with woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and remained unreachable by phone. Authorities established an unceasing surveillance perimeter around the house. Camera systems documented every approach. Motion sensors monitored for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors triggered an alarm. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, unfathomably tall and slender, moving with unnatural fluidity. The figure advanced directly toward the house, seemingly heedless of the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly lost connection. When the system reconnected, the figure had vanished. The house endures under perpetual surveillance to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as akin disappearances are reported in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have metamorphosed into legends among law enforcement officers. Some shun uttering them aloud, others shirk the case entirely. And local hikers now circumvent the house, fearful that mere mention might inexorably add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken by all. Story 20. In the stillness of the night, a flicker danced across the baby monitor's screen, a subtle anomaly that caught the mother's eye. Initially brushed off as mere interference, the glitch soon escalated as the audio crackled with static and a haunting voice whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill crept through her veins as she rushed to her son's room, heart thundering in her chest. But upon reaching the crib, her worst fear materialized. The room was empty, devoid of the infant she cherished. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only unsettling sight was a stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its unblinking black eyes fixed on her with an eerie intensity. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, tearing through her throat until raw agony set in. The neighbors, startled by her anguished cries, summoned emergency aid. When the authorities arrived, they found her cradling the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world of torment on the nursery floor. Samuel, her 4-month-old son, had vanished without a trace, leaving a void in her heart and a mystery shrouded in darkness. Initial investigations yielded little, a baffling lack of clues and a puzzle with no clear solution. No signs of forced entry marred the home. The security system stood vigilant throughout the night. The baby monitor's footage, once benign, now held a sinister secret, the enigmatic voice and static that defied logical explanation. How could a child be taken from a fortress-like home without a trace, leaving behind only a toy with haunting eyes? Suspicion veered towards Rebecca, her demeanor under scrutiny as whispers of doubt filled the community. Her husband, Daniel, absent on business, returned to a fractured reality. The strain in their marriage deepened by Samuel's disappearance, shadows of doubt encroaching upon their fragile world. Medical records hinted at Rebecca's inner turmoil, her battle with postpartum demons now under harsh scrutiny. A breakthrough emerged from the shadows, a pivotal find that shifted the investigation's focus. Microscopic fibers, foreign to the household, clung to the nursery windowsill, a trail leading to an outside intruder's entry. The search intensified, revealing glimpses of a mysterious figure in the night, a phantom lurking in the periphery. A footprint in the soil hinted at a skilled trespasser, leaving behind traces of a clandestine presence. As the inquiry delved deeper, Daniel's return marked a turning point. Unusual calluses on his hands, a newfound hobby in rock climbing, and a trail of questionable actions painted a damning portrait. Financial discrepancies, clandestine phone calls, and a hidden second life unraveled before investigators' eyes. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, now held the key to the truth. Digital forensics unveiled a sinister plot, hacked signals, manipulated transmissions, a web of deceit that ensnared the unsuspecting family. Following the digital breadcrumbs, investigators unearthed a chilling discovery in a secluded basement, a woman named Elaine, harboring a stolen child. Elaine, a specter from Daniel's past, haunted by loss and fueled by desperation, emerged as a ghostly figure in the unfolding drama. Her eyes vacant, her motives unfathomable, she surrendered to the authorities without resistance, her connection to Daniel weaving a tapestry of deceit and betrayal. The trial unveiled a tapestry of deception, an intricate web of lies and treachery that ensnared the guilty. The baby monitor's whispered secrets, once dismissed as mere interference, now echoed with the truth, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within familiar walls. As justice was served, Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The monitor, a silent witness to their harrowing ordeal, held a truth that transcended words, a reminder of the resilience that emerged from the depths of despair. In the hush of night, as sleep beckoned with its soothing embrace, the tale of the vanished child and the shattered illusions whispered through the darkness, a haunting lullaby that echoed through the corridors of time. Story 21. The old Polaroid held secrets in its faded hues, capturing a birthday celebration lost to time. Among the smiling faces and flickering candles, there lurked a mystery, a shadowy figure, distant yet ever closer with each passing photo. When Sarah Winters unearthed the box of forgotten memories from her mother's attic, she stumbled upon a chilling discovery that set her on a path to unravel the enigma that haunted her past. The collection of aged photographs should have brought solace, a glimpse into happier days of family gatherings. Instead, it unveiled a sinister truth that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The figure in the background, a man unseen by memory, yet present in every frame, growing bolder with each snapshot. As Sarah peered into the eyes of the shadowy intruder, she felt a chill crawl down her spine. She reached out to her father, seeking answers to the unsettling mystery that had unveiled itself through the lens of time. But his response was laden with disbelief, denying the existence of a stranger among the cherished memories. Seeking clarity, Sarah turned to Detective Marcus Reed, laying out the eerie progression of the unknown figure through the photographs. The detective, weathered by years of unraveling mysteries, studied the evidence with a keen eye, his intuition sensing a malevolent presence lurking within the captured moments of joy. With each photo meticulously examined, a sense of foreboding grew thicker in the air. The figure's calculated movements hinted at a sinister purpose, a specter from the past weaving through the tapestry of family gatherings with unseen intentions. As the investigation delved deeper, hidden details began to surface, revealing a connection to a dark chapter in the region's history. Dental records and enhanced images painted a grim picture, linking the shadowy figure to a long-forgotten maintenance worker, Robert Keller, who had vanished amidst a cloud of suspicion surrounding child abductions. The revelation sent shockwaves through Sarah's world, unraveling a web of secrets that had long been buried beneath layers of time. The figure in the photos, once a haunting presence on the fringes of memory, now stood exposed as a harbinger of unspeakable horrors that had plagued families for decades. Amidst the chilling revelations, closure came in the form of grim discoveries, the remains of missing children unearthed from the shadows of the past. The truth, though grim, brought a semblance of justice to the families who had long awaited answers to their unending grief. As Sarah sat alone, enveloped by the weight of the revelations, she realized that some nightmares linger beyond the confines of sleep. The box of photos held not just memories, but a testament to the unseen dangers that lurk in the corners of celebration, waiting to surface when least expected. With a heavy heart, Sarah returned the photos to their resting place, a silent reminder of the hidden figures that move through the world unseen, leaving behind a trail of darkness in the wake of captured moments frozen in time. Story 22, The Enigmatic Victorian. She crossed the threshold, the dust dancing in the stagnant air around her. The abandoned Victorian stood frozen in time, its decaying walls and shrouded furniture telling tales of neglect. Every room she entered felt like a déjà vu, a loop leading her back to the parlor where a sense of eerie stillness lingered. But the front door she had entered through had vanished, trapping her in a maze of familiar yet unfamiliar spaces. Detective Sarah Lind found herself at the heart of a chilling mystery as she stood in the dimly lit Victorian, where the body of Morgan Pierce had been discovered. The house, once a mere curiosity, now held secrets darker than the legends whispered by the locals. Morgan, found peacefully seated in an antique chair, seemed to be waiting for someone, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression serene. As the investigation unfolded, it revealed Morgan's fascination with the house's architectural anomalies and mysterious spatial inconsistencies. Her research led her to explore the depths of the Victorian, where doors led to ever-changing rooms and the walls seemed to whisper secrets of their own. But her exploration ended tragically, her body showing signs of unexpected asphyxiation. Clues emerged pointing to a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, hinting at a substance used in shamanic rituals known to distort perception. Her deleted messages hinted at a mysterious connection to someone who shared her intrigue for the enigmatic house. Adam Reeves, an architectural historian, emerged as a key figure, his knowledge of spatial phenomena drawing Morgan deeper into the house's mysteries. Yet Reeves had an alibi, leading the investigation down a different path. A revelation from Alina Blackwood's grandson unveiled a dark family secret: deaths in the house, always found in the parlor, always peaceful. The family referred to it as the claiming, hinting at a malevolent force lurking within the walls. A hidden compartment behind the fireplace unveiled artifacts from ancient cultures, hinting at a deity of liminal spaces, a guardian of thresholds between worlds. The discovery of Morgan's missing equipment added a layer of complexity to the case, as partial fingerprints not matching known individuals were found throughout the house. The investigation took a tragic turn with Reeves' death, mirroring Morgan's demise with the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that unlocked the hidden chamber, tying him to the mysteries of the house in ways beyond comprehension. His final email hinted at a truth that transcended physical boundaries, a perception trap that held those who delved too deep into the house's secrets. The Victorian, now condemned and shrouded in whispers of the supernatural, stands as a monument to the unknown. Lights flicker within its walls on certain nights, and stories circulate of visitors who vanish into its depths, never to return. Some believe the house claims those who dare to unravel its mysteries, while others see Morgan and Reeves as pioneers who glimpsed into realms beyond our reality. The truth remains elusive, like a phantom door in a house where every path leads back to the beginning. The Victorian stands as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets with a patience as eternal as time itself. Story 23. The ancient apartment exuded a sense of history, its time-worn walls holding secrets whispered by time itself. The heating system let out a low, mournful groan, the pipes rattling like a chorus of forgotten memories. It was all part of the building's old soul, or so they believed. But then in the quiet hum of the night, she heard it, a voice soft and insistent, weaving through the vents like a ghostly thread. It wasn't the typical chatter of neighbors or the creaks of settling wood. It was a whisper calling to her, beckoning her closer. Intrigued yet apprehensive, she lined in, her heart quickening with each word that caressed her ears. A rush of icy air brushed against her cheek, carrying with it a message, almost teasingly spoken: "I know you're listening." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself standing in the heart of the empty apartment, a still figure amidst the flurry of forensics experts diligently working around her. Cameras clicked and flashed, freezing the scene in time. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led them here, had been absent for a week before the stench raised alarm, and what they uncovered within the ventilation system defied logic. Reports of voices through the vents, Officer Patel recounted from his notes, dismissed as mere building quirks by management. Shaw's keen eyes caught the scratches etched around the vent, signs of a struggle that transcended mere structural sounds. These marks weren't born of tools, she mused quietly. The desperation engraved in the metal hinted at a frantic attempt to escape from the inside out. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had left behind a world puzzled by her sudden disappearance. Her classroom flowers bloomed in silent tribute. Her absence felt like a void in the hearts of those who knew her kindness. And then her sister's voice, laden with sorrow, painted a picture of a woman haunted by unseen specters. She feared eyes on her, voices in the walls, the sister confided, her voice quivering with emotion. Shaw scanned the apartment anew, her gaze lingering on the meticulously made bed, the abandoned coffee mug, the chair placed just so beneath the vent as if waiting for a clandestine conversation. The forensic revelations only deepen the mystery. Fibers intertwined in the grate matched Alina's cherished cardigan. A foreign fingerprint, not hers, lingered on the inside of the vent cover. But it was the recording salvaged from Alina's phone that sent shivers down Shaw's spine. Alone in her car, raindrops tapping a haunting melody, she listened. Alina's voice, timid and afraid, seeking validation from the unseen. And then the chilling reply, a whisper from the shadows, "Elena, dear Elena. Let me in." The building's past whispered tales of its own, a history marred by departing tenants, tales of spectral noises, of a resident plagued by phantom voices. Harold Weber, the unassuming superintendent, bore witness to it all. His nonchalant demeanor wavered only when probed about 4B's past occupants. Shaw sensed a shift in his facade, a crack in his practiced calmness. A hidden passage uncovered within Alina's bathroom unraveled the truth, a clandestine network of tunnels snaking through the walls like hidden arteries. Within this labyrinth, remnants of a watcher emerged, a flashlight, discarded wrappers, a chilling testament to covert habitation. Shaw's team, following the trail, uncovered Weber's digital dossier, a compendium of intrusion, of voyeurism disguised as care. Weber's arrest was devoid of resistance, his serene smile a mask for the darkness within. "They all hear me eventually," he intoned cryptically to Shaw, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling certainty. The truth, unveiled by the coroner's findings, painted a grim portrait of Alina's final moments, a drugged descent into the bowels of the building, lured by promises of sanctuary, only to find a web of deceit. As the trial unfolded, Weber's facade of delusion crumbled under the weight of evidence. His meticulous cataloging of lives disrupted, of souls tarnished, stood as a testament to his twisted devotion. The jury's swift verdict echoed through the courtroom, a condemnation of a man who made walls whisper, who turned homes into prisons. Weber's parting words to Shaw lingered, a haunting echo of his twisted legacy. "The whispers endure," he murmured, a chilling prophecy of voices that transcended walls and time. And so the apartment building, now a hollow shell of its former self, whispers still. New tenants hear the echoes of the past, the chilling murmurs that dance through the vents, the cold breath of a presence unseen. The groan of the heating system, the rattle of pipes, it's all part of the building's tale, a story that never truly sleeps. Story 24, the apartment sat in silence, its emptiness lingering for months. When the new tenants arrived, they expected nothing more than a layer of dust and perhaps some abandoned furniture. However, one door refused to yield to their gentle nudges. It was a closet, stubbornly locked from within. The landlord, with a sense of trepidation, finally forced it open, anticipating only old coats or discarded items. But what they discovered within sent a shiver down their spines. The walls were marred with deep, jagged scratches, etched into the wood with a frantic urgency. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its battery long drained except for one unread message glowing hauntingly on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, had encountered her fair share of unsettling scenes in her career. Yet this particular sight caused a chill to creep up her spine, not from the sight of blood or overt violence, but from the implications of those desperate scratch marks, a silent cry for help, a struggle for escape. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the eerie scratches. "And bring me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The landlord, visibly anxious with perpetually clammy hands, nervously disclosed that the former tenant, a reticent young woman, had vacated abruptly, leaving behind unpaid rent. She was quiet, kept to herself. "Left about 6 months back," he muttered, his eyes skirting away from the closet. "Never caused any trouble." Forensic analysis unveiled multiple traces of blood within the scratch marks on the walls. Most matched a single individual, presumably the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported missing after her sudden disappearance from work. However, two DNA samples puzzled the investigators. One remained unidentifiable in the system, while the other belonged to a man who had supposedly perished 2 years prior. "This doesn't make sense," Shaw murmured, her gaze fixed on the perplexing lab results. Derek Mercer, a convict of assault 5 years ago, was believed to have died in a tragic car crash, his identity confirmed through dental records. Yet his fresh DNA lingered on the closet walls. Emma's apartment painted a poignant picture of interrupted life: unopened mail, a neglected coffee mug in the sink, a neatly made bed. Her phone records hinted at a sudden change. Regular calls to her sister dwindling to silence, replaced by numerous calls from an unidentified number in the weeks leading up to her vanishing. The sister mentioned Emma spoke of a secretive new boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name given, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage from a nearby store captured Emma's entry into her building one fateful night, trailed shortly after by a mysterious man in a cap, carefully concealing his face from the cameras. Breakthrough arrived when partial fingerprints belonging to Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's doorknob. He staged his death, Shaw concluded. The question remains why and what ties him to Emma. The enigmatic DNA sample led the investigators to another missing person case, Lynette Porter, who had vanished 3 years earlier. Though her trail had gone cold, witnesses reported seeing a woman matching her description frequenting Emma's residence. Shaw pieced together the puzzle while scrutinizing traffic camera footage, linking a car registered under Derek Mercer's mother's name to repeated visits near Emma's apartment. The driver bore a striking resemblance to Derek. The inquiry led them to a secluded property owned by Mercer's family, where, behind sturdy basement doors, they uncovered Lynette Porter alive yet emaciated, confined in squalid conditions mirroring the closet where Emma had been ensnared. "He forced me to witness," she whispered hollowly, her eyes vacant. "He said I needed to understand the fate of girls who dare to leave." A trail of evidence emerged, journals detailing Mercer's fixation on dominance, photographs of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and most damning of all, video recordings of Mercer coercing Emma into the claustrophobic closet. "She thought she could expose me," his voice echoed on the recording. "No one reveals my secrets." The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned across jurisdictions. As authorities scoured for him, forensic psychologists constructed a bone-chilling profile. Mercer didn't just seek to end lives, he craved to inflict torment, relishing the sight of hope withering away in confined spaces. Upon his eventual capture at a bus terminal, Mercer carried a new identity and a ticket to a coastal destination. Within his backpack lay a roll of duct tape, a hunting knife, and a newspaper clipping chronicling Emma's disappearance. During interrogation, Mercer maintained a disconcertingly serene demeanor. "She sent that message herself," he asserted about the phone. "She desired to be discovered, but she didn't merit salvation." The subsequent trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate scheme to feign his demise, utilizing dental records from a vagrant whose features mirrored his own. For 2 years he had eluded detection, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's remains were never located. Forensic findings suggested she had met her end within that unforgiving closet, etching desperate pleas on walls that remained indifferent to her plight. The enigmatic message on the phone had been her final effort to implicate her assailant. She had messaged herself from Mercer's phone while he slumbered, knowing her fading battery would immortalize her plea when the device eventually powered down. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict on all charges. As the sentence of life imprisonment without parole was handed down, Mercer's lips curled into a faint smile, as if the outcome aligned with a private rationale only he comprehended. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the court. He confined us in cramped spaces because that's where his mind dwells, trapped in shadows. However, while he decays in his cell, I'll be basking in the sunlight. The case revolutionized departmental procedures for missing person investigations, emphasizing the scrutiny of relational patterns and rental property surveys. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment, mounting it in her office, a poignant reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes aren't always drenched in blood, but in the desperate imprints of those battling to endure. Story 25, The Unseen Observer. She always avoided the attic, finding it unsettling, but when a storm brought a leak in the roof, she had no choice but to confront its secrets. The attic was a realm of forgotten things, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. Amidst the shadows in the distant corner sat an ancient dollhouse, exquisitely detailed, its miniature furniture arranged with meticulous care. Yet, as she gazed inside, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures within were not mere dolls. They were tiny, intricately hand-carved replicas of her own family, each figure placed exactly where they sat downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to portray her stood near the attic door, a silent sentinel. Rebecca Morgan hesitantly traced her finger over the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the indent where the tiny wooden figure stood. The discovery sent a chill through her body, beyond the icy draft whispering through the attic's ancient beams. The dollhouse had no place in this setting. This was not her childhood home, but a rental property her family had recently moved into. The unsettling saga began with Rebecca's frantic call to the authorities. Officers arrived at the suburban house to find a family in turmoil, gathered in the living room, refusing to venture back upstairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their distress as a prank or a trick of the mind in a new environment. Yet the astonishing attention to detail in the dollhouse figures caught Detective Harmon's attention. Each tiny figurine captured a unique aspect of the family members: the father's receding hairline, the son's favored hoodie, even the mother's small birthmark, she later recounted. The investigation took a chilling turn when forensic teams uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. Even more disturbing were the microscopic cameras hidden in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse. Delving into the Morgan family's activities in the days leading up to the discovery revealed a disquieting revelation. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse didn't just mimic the family's recent whereabouts, but mirrored precise moments from different days, hinting at a voyeur who had been studying them closely. We soon realized this was not a mere case of stalking, Detective Harmon explained. The level of obsession displayed by the perpetrator was unprecedented in criminal psychology. The investigation uncovered a concealed entrance to a basement, camouflaged behind a false pantry wall. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living area, suggesting someone had been dwelling beneath the family's feet for weeks. Food remnants, water bottles, and a sleeping bag painted a picture of a covert resident. The absence of forced entry confounded investigators. Property records revealed the house lay vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans moved in. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had passed away within a short span. Their son oversaw the estate sale and subsequent rental of the property. Interrogations with neighbors yielded little insight, except for one elderly lady who sporadically noticed lights in the house during its unoccupied period. "I assumed it was the real estate folks showing the property," she remarked. "Never occurred to me someone might be living there without permission." The breakthrough emerged through digital analysis. Tracing the data from the miniature cameras led investigators to an apartment across town. Inside, walls adorned with photos of the Morgan family and prior residents of the house revealed a disturbing obsession. Journal entries meticulously documented the daily routines of each family member. The most harrowing find was a workshop filled with partially constructed dollhouses, each representing different homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the former homeowners. Financial records unveiled mounting debts after his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he had fashioned a covert living space, overseeing the property while collecting rent. The dollhouse served as his command center, elucidated the forensic psychologist involved. Each figure symbolized someone under his watchful gaze. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a threat, but a nod to her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed, detailing his motives. "They were living in my childhood home, sleeping in my parents' room. I needed to ensure they treated it with respect." Regarding the positioned figures, he chillingly stated, "I wanted them to know I was always watching." Psychological assessments unveiled a convoluted case of possessive fixation. Wells struggled to cope with losing his childhood abode and devised an intricate system to assert control over it. The dollhouse became his conduit to possess both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never returned to the house. Rebecca recalled that what haunted her most wasn't discovering the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been observing us all along, molding our lives, reducing us to mere playthings. The true terror wasn't the dollhouse itself, but realizing we were mere pawns to be manipulated and watched. Wells faced charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and breaking and entering. The case catalyzed a review of property disclosure laws concerning deaths and the duty of agents to ensure homes are vacated properly before new tenants occupy them. At sentencing, the judge highlighted the profound violation endured by the Morgan family. You didn't just invade their residence, but their sense of security and independence. You witnessed their most intimate moments and recreated them for your twisted pleasure. What unsettles criminologists about this case is how long Wells might have operated unnoticed had Rebecca not unearthed the dollhouse. Examination of his journals hinted at a 2-year span of secret residency in various homes, crafting dollhouses for each observed family. The Morgans eventually relocated far away, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statement to persistent anxiety, habitually checking closets and hidden spaces. She rid their new abode of all dollhouses and miniatures. "Some days I still feel eyes upon me," she lamented. "I wonder if somewhere a miniature version of myself is being maneuvered in a dollhouse I have yet to discover." Story 26. The hotel lay in the shadows of obscurity, a relic of a bygone era where transient souls sought brief respite. The weary clerk passed her the key with a cryptic warning, his gaze laden with unspoken mysteries. "Just avoid the last door on the left," his voice barely a whisper. Intrigue stirred within her, a silent beckoning to the forbidden. That night, amidst the hushed whispers of the hallway, she found herself drawn to that ominous door. The brass handle sent shivers through her as she reached out, the wood cool beneath her touch. To the casual observer, it was just another door, nondescript and unassuming until she pressed her ear against its solid surface. A faint, haunting breath brushed against her, a presence unseen but deeply felt. Detective Morgan Reed emerged from the veil of sleep, stepping into the realm of shadows and secrets as she ventured beneath the tape marking the threshold of tragedy. The scent of iron lingered in the air, a metallic tinge that spoke of unspeakable deeds. Blood had seeped into the fabric of the room, staining it with the echoes of violence. Amidst the stark contrasts of order and chaos, a young woman lay motionless, her golden locks splayed like a halo of despair. Her vacant gaze pierced the darkness, frozen in a silent scream of agony or fear. Reed knelt beside the fallen figure, a silent witness to the brutality that had shattered the serenity of the room. The forensic technician's monotone voice cut through the silence, detailing the grim familiarity of the scene. Another victim, another tragedy, each bearing the same macabre signature. The victim's elegance clashed with the squalor of the setting, a stark reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the forgotten motel. No robbery, no trace of struggle, only the chilling certainty of a killer driven by twisted motives. Back at the precinct, Reed confronted the mosaic of evidence spread before her. 3 lives intertwined by the thread of death, each a haunting reflection of the other. The whispers of a predator on the prowl echoed through the corridors of the town, stirring fear in its wake. Autopsy reports revealed the methodical cruelty of the killer, a personal vendetta woven into the fabric of each crime, devoid of mercy or rationale. Days bled into nights as Reed delved deeper into the shadows cast by the killer's malevolent presence. Surveillance footage yielded no solace, no glimpse of the phantom who stalked the night. The victim, Elaine Werner, remained an enigma, a woman of meticulous precision thrust into the chaos of her final moments. A chance revelation from her sister unveiled a clandestine affair, a web of deceit spun by a man known only as C. The investigation shifted its focus to Werner's workplace, where the veneer of professionalism masked a darker truth. A chance discovery led Reed to Charles Emerson, a man of impeccable reputation cloaked in shadows of suspicion. Beneath the facade of innocence lurked a predator, a man who played the role of a devoted husband while leading a double life of deceit and betrayal. As the web of deception unraveled, Emerson's mask slipped, revealing the darkness that dwelled within. His confession echoed through the sterile walls of the interrogation room, a chilling admission of guilt tainted by delusion. The trial unveiled the depths of his depravity, the emptiness that lay behind his polished facade. Justice was served, but for Reed, the echoes of the door on the left case lingered, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the depths of human depravity. In the stillness of the evidence locker, 3 keys lay dormant, relics of a nightmare that refused to fade. Reed, haunted by the specter of the past, found herself wandering down hotel corridors, counting doors in silent contemplation. Behind each door, a story untold, a secret whispered in the shadows, a reminder that some doors, once opened, reveal a darkness that can never be truly extinguished. Story 27, the Costume Emporium, was in its final days, dispersing remnants of its past. Amidst the fading relics, a woman uncovered a mask, its features delicate yet eerily real. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated. "That's not ours," he murmured. Perplexed, she searched for a tag, finding none. Shrugging off the mystery, she carried it home. That evening, she awoke to a gentle rustle, a whisper of fabric in the stillness. Mask had vanished from the dresser, now perched on her nightstand, silently observing her. The woman known as Catherine Reed was discovered by her neighbor. Sunlight spilled through the open door, illuminating the somber scene within. The borrowed book was forgotten as the neighbor stumbled upon a sight that would linger in the minds of investigators for years to come. Catherine lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, the mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived, shadows dancing to the rhythm of camera shutters. "No signs of forced entry," an officer remarked, jotting notes in solemn silence. The detective surveyed the room, absorbing details unnoticed by others. A jarred drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, ordinary yet ominous in the absence of its inhabitant. The medical examiner, with a solemn countenance, struggled to discern the cause of death. "No visible wounds, no signs of struggle," he intoned. Gesturing to her frozen expression, he noted, terror etched into her very being. Bending closer, the detective whispered. Something frightened her to her core. Catherine, an art appraiser known for her precision, had an eye for authenticity that set her apart. Colleagues recounted her keen ability to discern the counterfeit. Could this gift have led to her untimely demise? Surveillance footage from the costume shop unveiled a peculiar incident. The cashier's bewilderment at the mask's origin was evident. The owner disavowed any knowledge of it, denying its presence in their inventory. Visiting the now vacant shop, the detective confronted the nervous owner, who confessed to sporadic anomalies following acquisitions from a deceased collector's estate sale. Breakthrough arrived with microscopic fibers found on Catherine's fingertips, puzzling in their composition, a blend of human hair and an enigmatic organic substance defying identification. Tracing back, records revealed a pattern of deaths linked to the acquisition of mysterious masks, each victim bearing the same terror-stricken countenance and demise. A retired detective, a veteran of a similar case, shared a revelation. Across a dim-lit room, he disclosed hidden inscriptions within the masks, hinting at ancient rituals of soul transference. A journal discovered within Catherine's residence unveiled her descent into paranoia, sensing an unseen presence and delving into the mask's malevolent history. The evidence amassed, enigmatic fibers, Catherine's research, a series of deaths echoing a macabre cycle. The medical examiner's verdict, death by heart failure induced by sheer fright. What horror could still a heart with such dread? Surveillance footage from a neighboring abode uncovered a chilling sight and entity, masked in Catherine's likeness but moving unnaturally, a puppeteer's mimicry of life. A nationwide hunt commenced for the elusive mask, resurfacing months later in a distant vintage store sold to an unknown buyer. The enigma endures unsolved. The detective preserves Catherine's journal, a testament to an uncanny truth beyond official files. Nights bring restless awakenings, a sense of unseen eyes. Fearing the mask's return, she secures her abode, dreading the day it finds another bearer vessel seeking a new occupant in a cycle unbroken, spanning centuries. The mask lingers, waiting to be unearthed once more. And when it is, another soul will awaken to its silent approach in the night, vacant eyes fixed upon them, craving the essence behind their gaze.